Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to Business Across Borders Summit Afro-Eurasia. Designed to build and promote international business connections, the summit gathers key players from Portugal, Spain, France, the United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, China, Singapore, South Africa, Morocco, and Tunisia. To kick off the summit, please allow me to welcome Paulo Carlos from AIP, the Portuguese Industrial Association, and Rui Souza from Market Access, who will do the welcome speech.
Hello, good morning. My name is Paulo Caldas. I'm Director of Economy, Financing and Innovation of Portuguese Industrial Association. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for your participation, especially the speakers that are with us. Pedro Vieira, that will it will be the keynote speaker for Asia, João Sardo, the speaker for Europe, and also Ana Pinto, the keynote speaker for Africa. We have a lot of markets and a lot of information to deal with. Knowledge of these markets is important for our companies and also for all organizations that want to deal with these markets. Thank you so much for your upgrade and valuable information. And the AIP with this project, together with Market Access and Deloitte, tried to make the competitiveness of our companies in these markets, small and medium companies, with the help of big corporations, big companies like Sonai, Motengil, ADP, TechEver, and Grupo Pustana. And we would like to match all these strengths, all this value together in order to get competitiveness and sustainability growth in these markets for our companies. Thank you so much. I wish that this journey will be a very helpful and profitable journey for our companies and for everybody. I wish you the rest of a nice week. Thank you so much and a good journey. I will pass through Rui Souza, a very special friend and also a partner on this project in order to go forward. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Paulo. So good morning, all. I would like to thank the Portuguese Industrial Association for the opportunity to collaborate in this project and to organize this event. I would like also to thank all the speakers that have accepted our invitation and that are with us today. Your expertise will be certainly very valuable for everybody. And the last, but the main goal of this initiative, thanks for all the participants and attendees. I hope this session meets all your expectations and that will be useful and contribute for the growth of your companies. So thank you all and enjoy.
We will now travel to Asia. Pedro Vieira, entrepreneur, university lecturer, PhD researcher, and international business expert at Market Access, will now do a quick markets overview about Asia.
Hi, hello everyone. So thank you for being here today. To talk about Asia is not easy. It's home to some of the world's largest and fastest growing economies, and China, of course, being a standout example, but also Japan, that we will not cover in this webinar, but it's the third largest economy in the world. and also India, that is one of the most populated countries in the world as well, and it's an important country and economy in Asia. Indonesia as well. Well, we would not stop talking about the potential of this region of the world. It's 48 countries. It's the world's largest and most diverse continent, 60% of the world population, and last year with a GDP growth of around 4%. We cannot forget that all the cultural differences, regulatory complexities, and geopolitical risks are obstacles and challenges for companies that want to invest and to export to Asian countries. In particular, in this session, we will be talking about China, Singapore, and United Arab Emirates, so three of the most dynamic and rapidly developing economies in this region. Well, to create some or to share some first ideas about these three countries, I decided to, try not to bother you too much, but I decided to make some comparison in some macroeconomic indicators and some other export indicators as well, so we can see more or less where these countries are, in particular comparing with Portugal. So we will have in the charts and the figures that I'm going to share with you, the United Arab Emirates in blue, China in red, Singapore in yellow, and Portugal in green. And the first figure I would like to share with you is the gross domestic product. And as you can see, China is definitely a huge economy, now the second biggest economy in the world. But look that in the early 2000s, it was not as far as it is now from the other three countries. Well, here we can only see what happens to China because the other three are so small comparing with it that we don't see many differences. Of course, that we look to the GDP per capita, and in this case, in purchasing power parity, we see that China then lags behind all the other countries, or all the other economies. Singapore has overcome the United Arab Emirates around 2008, and Singapore is now the country, the economy where we find this GDP per capita at a higher value. We can see here the economic growth since 2000 and the forecast for 2023. We can highlight here that China was above 10% for many years. Singapore has also economic growth close to 15% in 2010. And well, all of them suffered with COVID, as we can see, but still China was also above or in a positive figures for this period. Here we can see some value added by the manufacturing sector. China and Singapore are in the front line. In terms of services, Singapore and Portugal are the two countries that can be highlighted. And trade openness. So we can see that when we have exports plus imports as percent of GDP, Singapore is the most open economy when we compare these four economies that we are analyzing, and China is the less opened. But of course, in absolute terms, what China imports and exports is a lot. In terms of foreign direct investment, China attracts more investment than the other three countries. And when we see population, we are talking about one of the most populated countries in the world, China together with India. India might overpass China in a few years. And well, it's really impressive. We are talking about a size, a scale that has nothing to do with the other three countries. In terms of urban population, China, that is, changing a lot, has been changing a lot, has more than 50% now of its population living in cities, in urban areas, but all the other countries have higher figures here. Population age is 65 and above. We can see that Portugal is and we know this very well, that is one of the oldest countries in the world in terms of population, of course. United Arab Emirates is where we can find youngest people, and it's where we find as well less female population. In terms of Human Development Index, Singapore ranks number 1, followed by the United Arab Emirates and China in 4th place. And finally, I also like to share this happiness index, where we see United Arab Emirates in 1st place, then Singapore, then Portugal, and then China. To finalize this more dense part and to go to the debate and the experience that we would like to hear about, let me just share with you the importance of these 3 countries for Portugal as a destination for our exports. If we see here the biggest countries to where Portugal exports to, we see that the first one out of these 3 that we are analyzing is China, but ranks number 14 in the list and represents around 1.1% of our exports. If we look only to Asia, we see that China, it's number 1, ranks number 1, and 14 if we consider the whole world. The United Arab Emirates is the 7th in Asia and number 41 in the world, and Singapore 10%, the 10th position, and it ranks 49 in terms of all the countries to where Portugal exports to. Let me just highlight very briefly here the figures of these exports, and also what has been happening in the last 4 years. And we can see here that the exports from Portugal to China have decreased in the last 4 to 5 years, in this case 6%, but with a big recovery last year, so where we grew 24%. Singapore is the one that have been the exports of Portugal have been increasing 15% in the period from 2017 to 2021, and 25% last year. Of course, when we talk about China, we see it as a major player in the global economy, but I cannot forget that when we created market access and we funded market access also with a Chinese partner, what we were looking and what the companies were trying to get in China was this light blue part of the GDP growth components. I remember very well that at the time, and I even, decided to keep and still show this graph, this chart from The Economist, that at the time we thought that this growth from China was coming from the exports. And if we see here in the dark blue, net exports are important, but they were much less important than what was happening in domestic demand. So at the time, I remember also that we were always discussing about this 10% of the China's population that were around, represented around 115 million people. That was what European companies were trying to get. So it was a slice of that pie that European companies were trying to get, and that Portuguese companies actually got. We have several examples in the consumer goods of Portuguese companies that are being successful. Well, in the Chinese market, not with all this 150 million. In the meantime, they have increased. Of course, they have a slice of that. But today, the point is that this is not just a story of size. We know that today in China is also a story of innovation and disruption. We see a lot of trends in China, happening in China, that only later they happen in Europe and the United States. We are talking about all these links between and integration between social media, online payments, that result in this omni-channel retail, on-demand services. So everything is very aggressive there. For example, Amazon Pay and Alipay started more or less at the same time in 2014. And when Amazon Pay reached 25%, Alipay and Tencent, for example, have reached 90% of adoption. So what is happening there is really impressive. So I would say, and this is something for us to discuss today, that maybe we should look at some of these markets, not just as an export or investment destination, but also as a source of knowledge and trends. Then we have Singapore, well, that despite its small size, it's a major economic powerhouse. We can find their efficient infrastructures, business-friendly environment, and a high-skilled workforce. Its economy is dominated by high-tech manufacturing, financial services, transportation, and with a focus on attracting foreign investment and talent. However, we have also seen Singapore as a hub. It's for us very common to say or to hear that Singapore it's a hub for other Southeast Asian countries. And what we are going to discuss today, and Luis in particular has a strong view about this, is if Singapore is in fact a hub, or if we should look into the Asian markets in a different perspective. Another country that we consider a hub, it's United Arab Emirates, linking not only Portuguese or European countries and companies to the Gulf region, but also making the link between Asia, the Gulf countries, and Africa. So this is something that we can also discuss if this is the case, because it happened in the past, but the question is to understand if we can take advantage of that, or if there's other perspectives, as I expect that we will have about Singapore. So this was just a small introduction with a few numbers, but I hope that this, well, very rapidly could give you a view of the size of these countries, the size of these economies, and where Portugal is, not only in terms of macroeconomics comparisons, but in terms of doing business, in particular exporting to these markets. So thank you very much for this time and for listening to this first presentation. And let's go now for the most interesting part, that is to listen who are in the market and that have a more hands-on view to share with us.
We are delighted to introduce now the roundtable about Asia that focused on China, Singapore, and United Arab Emirates markets. Pedro Vieira will moderate the debate, and we will count with the participation of several speakers from these markets. Firstly, we present Agota Birtalan from United Arab Emirates. Agota has over 11 years B2B marketing experience, working with companies in the Middle East and Europe, helping them build marketing strategies, brand recognition, and develop international presence. We will also count with Annabelle Rong from China. Annabelle has devoted all her career life to trade and investment consultancy by working with companies and organizations from China, the US, and European countries. Representing Singapore, we have Luis Barbosa and Ricardo Cupido. Luís Barbosa performed as Program Business and Digital Transformation Officer and Board Advisor in several worldwide multi-sector business corporations and government agencies in Germany, UK, and France. Recently, he performs as CEO, Corporate Transformation Officer in several major family business conglomerates in Asia Pacific, Europe, and GCC. As well, he is a member of the Harvard Business Review Advisory Council and recently joined European Commission as European Innovation Council member. Ricardo Cupido is Vice President and Managing Director of Brown-Forman Asia, a subsidiary of the international company that owns, among others, Jack Daniels and Jean Marais. In his current role, Ricardo leads a group of over 18 countries in the Asia region, which represents the largest growth opportunity for the company globally. Prior to this role, Ricardo served as Vice President and General Manager for the Polish and Turkish markets. Ricardo worked and lived in seven different countries, holding regional and global positions. During the summit, you are welcome to submit questions through the chat function that you can find on your right side.
Okay, so thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to be now analyzing with you the opportunities that these countries represent for Portugal. And I would start with Annabelle. Annabelle, you have been already working with some Portuguese companies, doing some research as well. I know that this is not easy to answer because I know that the opportunities depend a lot on the capacity of the companies as well as they depend on the opportunities that are in the market. But as you know a little better the profile of the Portuguese economy and the Portuguese companies, where do you see opportunities for us in China?
Yes, thank you, Pedro. Actually, I appreciate your insights in your presentation, and I think those are great points. As you mentioned, this China market is as always like a giant and far away from Portugal. So I believe, like myself, people feel difficult to get out of their comfort zone to understand remote and giant places. But before I answer about the opportunities and also from my experience of supporting Portuguese companies finding opportunities here in China, I want to say firstly that I encourage exporters to be more confident. As long as they are operating well in their domestic market or in the surrounding market, they should be able to find a piece of pie, as you mentioned, just maybe 10% of the whole population is good enough for their potentials in this China market because there's a huge demand here. So I think, yeah, you're right that it's difficult to address opportunities to the general public. I see from our audience the background are various. So maybe I can mention a few points here. First, industry sector I want to mention about is the consumer market. As we have already done a little bit of the consumer market supporting for Portuguese export into China, I believe that is still a very encouraged sector for Portuguese companies to look at because nowadays China is the second largest consumer market. And also for the e-commerce, e-retailing size is already more than Europe and American combined. It's over $2 trillion. So any companies who are in this sector, that consumer sector could include a lot of different products. That could be food and beverage, could be mother baby care, and could be like home appliances for senior population. Even that China is not as senior as Portugal, but we have a very huge population base. So the market needs is huge for those kind of consumer-related markets. And the second industry sector with opportunities, I want to mention something often neglected. It's about the aerospace and aviation. I mentioned about that is that people always think that industry covers like big aircraft manufacturer, which is not the case. according to my personal experience, because I happen to graduate from one of aviation astronautics university background, and many of my alumni are working in COMAT, which is the producer of China big aircraft. So I understand from their daily work that even as such a huge state-owned enterprises, they are very open of working with foreign companies in all kinds of activities. That could be software, that could be the simple circuit design of certain parts of the big crafts, or could be any service and any maintenance. So this is a quite open market for overseas companies, but in our traditional knowledge, many companies would think that's closed and China is not open for that, which is not true. And also for companies who are in the construction of airports, they have huge potential in this market, that the construction targets of airports across this big country is lagging behind. And that's among the next 5-year plan of the country. And the third opportunity I want to mention with this opportunity is the agriculture. That could divide it into the agriculture, traditional agricultural products, that people may understand that China is a huge market and with the capability of supply our own food. Actually, it's not the case. We are importing hugely from across the whole world. So without the import of agriculture products, we can't survive. You know, it's like 1.4 billion population. I think you are right. We are soon will be behind India, but it's still a huge base to feed the people. So anything related to the traditional agriculture products, though a lot of big agriculture countries are exporting heavily here, but they are actually still have some niche markets to be found by professional consultants like us here. And also for the agriculture equipment, those products, if they sell into China, they can enjoy a lot of local incentives. The other one, the other opportunity I want to mention briefly is related to the renewable energy, which is related to the commitment to Paris Agreement that China is going to reach the carbon zero by 2060. So right now the electrical cars are sold very rapidly here in China. Recently, I see a trend of automotive industry that many of the electrical cars are dropping their price heavily in this market. So by 2025, the expected sales of electrical cars is to be 25% of the whole cars running on the street. So for that, not only electrical cars, but also green energy, wind energy, natural resources application. I think companies from those sectors, they could find some good partners in China to sell their either technological licensee or other parts of the products or solutions into the huge market here. And the other one, I want to close this question very quickly, is about the infrastructure. This could including the traditional infrastructure like the medical system, as well as the social insurance system, as well as some new technologies opportunities such as IoT, such as 5G, and also artificial intelligence. I know that China is developing those technologies very heavily and devotedly. However, all of those people who are in this sector, especially in R&D sector, they are quite open-minded. They don't have those kind of high limits of a partnership with any companies or any people with foreign background. It's not a closed country like years ago. So I think that address of maybe 5 opportunities I mentioned here. Of course, there are other opportunities such as the medical devices, pharmaceuticals, because the population needs, as well as the senior population needs of improving their life quality, etc. I hope there will be opportunities to discuss about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. It was fantastic that you could cover all these opportunities, and actually starting with the consumer goods, it was, well, what the companies have been doing most in China with and typically with importers and not being there directly. Some companies already doing it through marketplaces, and in some cases starting, for example, with Tmall Global to understand if the market represents an opportunity or not, and only then move into the normal marketplaces within China with an importer. It was interesting that you mentioned 5-year plan because, well, I've been working with China for many years, and what is written in the 5-year plan, it happens. So, and this brings us to the other sectors that you mentioned, such as the aerospace and agricultural equipment, renewable energies, and so on. But let me just, before we change and we fly to another country, to talk a little more about this IT trend and the IT development that is happening. You mentioned something very interesting when you finished the presentation of the opportunities. That is that the Chinese companies, at least the ones that are more tech-based, are more open to partnerships. So do you feel that a startup or a company from Portugal that is more tech-oriented, you mentioned the insurance sector, so let's say a insure tech or a retail tech, do you think they can find opportunities in a country that is so developed and that is defining a lot of trends? How can they do this? You know, it's how can they get to those IT companies and try to make this partnership so that they can at the same time sell and make business in China, but also maybe to learn and to bring some of those trends to Europe and the United States?
Thank you. Yeah, very good question. I think that technology development is developed based on the motivation of people's needs. I'm a firm believer that the science development, the technology, it should be the for the well-being of human people, for people. So this actually echoes well with the topic of today, which is across borders. So if you look at the history of a human civilization, many of the major technological breakthrough, including IT, have changed all of the life across the whole world. So that's not the maybe that's not limited to the collaboration between Portuguese and Chinese companies, but actually it's natural. So I say from the market actually that the development from China actually, like you mentioned, like the Alipay, like the mobile payment, definitely I see that develop quickly because of the quick testing and the evolution of the technology applied in our daily life. So it's already a cash-free country right now. I haven't have any cash in my pocket for a few years already. So when I'm planning to travel overseas, I need to consider what was the life before. So it's really a change our life. However, back to the question, first of all, I think that China is currently only shifting from the low manufacturing center of the whole world, which we would call the manufacturing hub of the world, manufacturing factory of the world, to an advanced manufacturing country. It's still a developing country. You have that figure that the GDP per capita of Chinese people is still very low. It's far behind the developed countries. So we are very clear that it's a developing country, but the needs of technology development is for the improvement of the life quality of people. So whichever technology, including IT, that could improve our lives can find a market here. That's the fundamental philosophy in my mind. I see from the market right now that for many of the Chinese leading companies who are innovating the technologies in the world are actively promoting their technologies overseas. which is that they need the local partner, like in Portugal market. They need to work with the local companies to apply their technologies to the general public. So that's one direction of the collaboration I see in the market. I know companies like Alibaba, like Tencent, they all have those kind of overseas expansion actively. But when they are in the local market, like many of their platforms in Southeast Asia, if I'm not familiar with their structure, I don't know that's from Alibaba, or I don't know that's from Tencent. The partnership with the local companies, the partnership with the local major stakeholders, and make that technology available to the local public. That's one direction of collaboration. The other one is I see companies who are advanced in their own technology are looking for industrialization in the market. Because of the limit of their domestic market, they could consider to look at China market because of the market base. So usually they can license in their technologies into China by partnership with their local capital and licensing in partners. In that way, they could actively not only secure the capital that make that technology industrialized to be available into applicable products, but also they make that technology to be more matured, because the technological development definitely needs the capital investment. So that's what I see from the market. Of course, I want to mention here that there is the prejudice about China market that the IP protection is an issue, but we have helped many companies of both license out and license in, and had the opportunity to check about the IP protection laws and regulations. We found that it's even more strict than many developed countries. I think that maybe the country is very eager to change their perception of those kind of prejudices. And also the most important thing is that if there is some concerns from technology owner, I think there are some other big organizations such as the United Nations Industrial Organization. They also have technological collaboration centers across the world. So they are doing the similar thing like us. They are helping to bridge technologies across borders and to make those technologies to be applicable to the local market, and with a lot of success stories. I think companies with those backgrounds could definitely check those successful stories and build the trust and build the confidence before they move forward. Of course, before anything, they need to do a proper market intelligence and do the proper kind of market analysis of what is their advantages, what is competitive edge of their own technology, and what's a better direction to enter into a new market like here.
Thank you. And it was amazing to witness all this change in China, from IP to this IT development. So it's fantastic. Thank you very much, Annabelle.
Thank you.
Louise, I have mentioned this this issue about having Singapore as a hub. You have a fantastic local experience that can tells us something different. So if you could please tell us your view about Singapore and how it positions itself today in Southeast Asia.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'll try after Annabelle, great presentation. The bar is really high, so I'll try to catch it as much as possible. Pleasure to meet you all. I mean, I speak as a experience in the Asia country, and especially I speak as a very operational professional within a group that we have 20,000 employees across Asia, working with Adidas and Nike business as a close partnership. I also speak as someone that came from 5 years journey in Dubai, Middle East. So pleasure. I got for the place where you are. It's great. So why do I say this? Is that Portuguese companies, I would like to see them much more in Asia. Ricardo knows exactly what I'm saying, right? I think that there is huge opportunities, and there is great opportunities for Portuguese companies that needs to understand, in my opinion, that the pie is not necessarily on the big sectors. The pie are on the synergy sectors that our business culture is much attractive to. I mean, things like digital, things like automation. The sector I'm working with, textile, absolutely fantastic. Other sectors like mobility, I mean, you name it. So going to your question, Pedro, Singapore is a hub, definitely is a hub, right? More than ever is becoming a hub where many markets such as China, Japan is just overall in fundamental function and investment in Asia. Australia, Vietnam, actually I'm physically based in Saigon, in Vietnam at this moment. Indonesia is absolutely booming. So these overall major markets are building up the hub that is Singapore. But bear in mind that Singapore is a hub on network, a hub on development, a hub on opportunities, but we need to understand the market where this hub is working with. So Vietnam, for example, what I'm working with as a group that I'm working in is Singaporean as a shareholding, but we have many production and manufacturing units, 12 production units across Asia, including China. Decision-making is still very traditional basis. Decision-making is still very family basis. We need to understand this. The pie is not on the major monsters, and sectors, as I said before. The pie is in a way that we Portuguese know where to touch, how to communicate, how to discuss, how to negotiate. And that's what is most attractiveness, I do believe, that we still have and we should invest with. So to the business strategists and the business investors that want to come in Asia, focus on your strategy, focus on your objectives, but go very clearly on the relationship basis. I mean, do not pretend to make business online. I am a digital transformation expert, what I'm doing here, but eyes in the eyes still is decision-making coming from.
Can I assume from that, Luis, that being a hub, you should, well, even if Singapore can be a hub, you should not live in that bubble and just stay in Singapore, and
no,
you should
absolutely not. Absolutely not. You do have to understand where the basics for the hub is coming from. I mean, where are the roots of the hub coming from? It's not in Singapore necessarily. Vietnam is absolutely booming at this moment. It's one of the fastest growing economy GDP in the world, as you can see from the statistics. China is fundamentally present in Singapore. And Indonesia, I've been recently some weeks in Indonesia, and it's unbelievable, the strategy for expansion. And let me share you the textile sector, which we have clearly tradition from. I have been discussing with major brands worldwide in the major strategy planning that is being coming now. As you know, the supply chains are in absolutely typical transformation. And Portugal was mentioned at least 3 times. So we, Portugal, in the south of Europe, as this textile is traditional knowledge, and we have capacity for develop on textile, and we have the labor availability, which is North Africa, that we can work with. There is something is being discussed, and as I'm sharing with everyone is listening, that we should focus on our traditions as our country is, our business culture is, because Asia is a world of opportunities, is absolutely a world of opportunities. But
but if you don't mind, and before talking to Ricardo, that is very well linked to consumer goods. I believe that what you are, and if you could develop that idea a little more, what you are mentioning now, it's our integration in the value chains that exist, owning the value chains and having some parts in Southeast Asia, or integrating those value chains that already exist, and kind of supplying some parts that are needed, that maybe because of the size or for other reasons or quality, I don't know, the Southeast Asians cannot supply. How do you see this? How could Portugal, be integrated, because you work a lot in these value chains? How do you see Portugal integrating those value chains as an owner or as a part?
No, we have to work partnership as a partner. We cannot work in a partnership as an owner, right? So my suggestion is start from the beginning, right? Even is PME, small and medium companies is related, SMEs is related, right? We need to start from the beginning. So partnerships development, even developing services, services that maybe are not showing up as an opportunity, but this is the step in that we need to go, and we need to work up, and the objective of strategy to get some production units from there, even maybe not in Portugal, but is any country that we can work this synergy effect, and then go step by step. I mean, there's no miracles in Asia. I mean, we have to work from the beginning. So partnership contacts, going deeper on opportunities, understanding that we are in Europe, and Europe is a huge market, and going further on integrating value chain, and then you can aim to be owner of something in overall value chain, because competition is absolutely unbelievable. So as we understand it.
Yes. Thank you very much. Ricardo, you are more B2C oriented. Can I say so?
I think so. I think it's a fair statement, Pedro.
Okay. How do you see Asia and its differences? Because we have from Muslim countries, Buddhist countries. We have so it's so diverse that how do you see this difference, and more interesting, how do you deal with them?
So first of all, let me just say thank you so much for giving the opportunity to be here and to speak about Asia. It's a pleasure to be able to share my, I would say, limited knowledge. I've been in Asia only for 3 years, so very limited knowledge that I have, but at least I'm going to try to share the best I can. I will start by reinforcing some of the notions that have been shared here. Yes, Singapore, it's a nice hub from an infrastructure perspective in terms of networking and connecting to other markets, but it's definitely not a focused market, I'll say, from a consumer-based perspective. Yes, I believe that there are huge opportunities. China is, Northern Asia presents a huge opportunity in general for any company. China is an immense population with ginormous cities. And I would also like to mention Japan and Korea, the markets that have been not mentioned today, as economies that are currently really, they've been looked at as stagnant economies, very developed, very mature economies, but they are currently today reinventing themselves. And really, we see particularly Korea with a very strong accelerated growth in the past few years out of the COVID crisis. I think from a cultural perspective, I would say this has been probably the most difficult piece of moving into Asia and doing business in Asia, is try to understand the differences and try to find more even difficult to find similarities between the Eastern cultures and the Western cultures. Trying to understand or accept the fact that Asia is not one culture, and that there are many different cultures within Asia, and that things operate very differently, particularly between Northern and Southeast Asia. The ways of working, the values, the ethics are very different between these two parts of Asia. And I think for consumer-oriented companies, if you're trying to build a brand, then understanding contextual relevance, I think is a very important piece. I think any brand, international brand or Western brand that's been successful in Asia so far has been put a lot of effort on contextualizing their brand proposition and the product proposition to make it relevant for Asian consumers. This is probably, I lived and worked in different countries, and this is probably one of the parts of the world where the contextual relevance is more important, and where brands need to flex more what they are and how they present themselves to consumers in order to be relevant and let's say play a role in consumers' lives. I think that's probably one of the most important insights, I'll say. But definitely, if somebody wants to start doing business in Asia, I would say the first step would be to invest in understanding the cultures. And Luis said very well, understand how business is made. Don't try to do business by email or remotely. Come over, come to the online markets, have face-to-face meetings. This is a very, very important piece of doing business in Asia, in Asian markets.
It's how you create trust, right?
Correct.
It's
I think
not,
that's
in those countries. It's not only what you deliver, but it's the relationship you create with them, right?
Absolutely, Pedro. And I think that's something that goes both ways, right? I think it's for the companies to have trust in the partners that they find in Asia, but also for the Asian partners to find trust in the Portuguese companies, let's say. And so that's a very fundamental piece. Without that, I think it's quite difficult to develop a serious business. But
you work in a big company, right? A big group, with brands that are well known. The challenge is for an SME from Portugal, or even a big company from Portugal. The challenges are bigger, aren't they? How do you see that? What are the steps that we can make so that, because we might be more flexible and agile, the way you said that, for the adaptation, maybe a smaller company can do it faster, but there are some disadvantages as well. How do you see this? How can Portuguese companies deal with all this complexity, localization, but try to get some of these market that has been created?
I think that's an interesting point. I would say yes and no. I think yes is easier because I think we have more infrastructure as a global corporation. There is more infrastructure, particularly when it comes to legal factors and risk management. I think we're more protected, let's say, because we have more infrastructure in that area. And this is where I would recommend smaller companies to look at Singapore as a source for this kind of resources, because both the government and many other many incubators and many companies based in Singapore support the development of business across the region in that sense. So legal matters and IP protection, etc. I think from adaptability and the flexibility to be closer to consumers, I actually think a smaller company might be a lot more flexible. Part of my job, a big part of my role, is actually making the company understand that what works in the US and United States might not always work in Asia. And so last year has been a very long cultural journey on educating both sides on how to work with cultures. So I would think that smaller companies might have more flexibility and more agility on adjusting and adapting and finding solutions that are more relevant to the consumer. So I see that as an advantage, to be honest.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I can add, I would just recommend following a little bit on what Luis and I've already said. I think that I would definitely encourage Portuguese companies to focus on what is core to us. I see lots of opportunity on industries that are very core to Portugal. I would like to refer particularly for countries like in Northern Asia, particularly Singapore, Korea, and Japan. Certain categories like, for example, cork, which Portugal is the #1 producer in the world, eco materials. I think consumers are a lot more sensitive, let's say, to ecological issues already. They are developed markets, and so renewable energies, these areas where Portugal starts to be quite strong. I would encourage those companies to come over to Asia and explore, because this is definitely an area that has a lot of potential.
Yeah, and what is amazing is that we started talking about China, Singapore, and United Arab Emirates, and then we already mentioned Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, South Korea. So and all of them are really big, and some of them have been big economies for many years. Some are now exploding, and it's fantastic. Agota, thank you very much for waiting for this opportunity. You are last but not the least, and please, we have talked about this view of having Singapore as a hub. We also see that on the United Arab Emirates, or at least we consider it as a hub for the Gulf region, but also for connecting dots between China, Asia, and Africa. How do you see that? Is exactly like that, or there are other things that you have to do and not stay just in the United Arab Emirates, expecting that everything is going to happen? How do you see this?
Yes, definitely Dubai Dubai and the United Arab Emirates is described as a business hub, and also people here like to say that it's strategy located, which is really true, because within 5-8 hours you can reach almost any country in Asia, Africa, and Europe, which really helps the business companies to come in and do business in a really fast and quick way. In the same time, I think as I'm listening to comments about Singapore, it's very, very similar here with Dubai and Singapore, that I keep saying Dubai, but United Arab Emirates. It's very similar that, yes, it's a hub for the region and with other countries, but in the same time, you have to be here and understand the culture. And I think the United Arab Emirates, it's a really good entry point to the GCC or to the Gulf region, because if a company can successfully introduce a product or a service to the Emirates, then most likely they will be successful in the neighboring countries. As for example, Saudi is coming up like really strongly. It is taking a lot of innovative companies from the Emirates to Saudi, and not just Saudi, but other countries. So there is a strong network between companies and individuals in these regions. As Luis or Ricardo mentioned, that relationships really matter. Yes, you need to do digital marketing or you need to be present, but on the other hand, things are really connected here. So if you can manage to enter and find a really good local partner here, then most likely you will be successful in the region. And on the other hand, Dubai is a really innovative, or the United Arab Emirates, it's a really innovative country. They keep up with all the trends, and on a personal level, I'm coming from Romania. Europe is quite. I feel like you're more administrative, so doing business here it's easier. The country is focused on digitalization, making business setup and management really easy. So I believe like any Portuguese company or European company who wants to set up a business here, it's, I would say, quite affordable or cost efficient, and it's easy to manage. So that's I believe it's a huge benefit, because just managing a business completely remotely would be possible. Of course, you need to have the relationships and partnerships here to really enter the market, but just from the administrative side, it's easy. And as I said, it's a hub, so you can reach a lot of different countries from here, and that makes business really, really easy administratively.
Something that we always tend to think as well is the role of women in that part of the world. And the fact is that you are a woman and you are doing business there. So do you consider it more difficult to do it there than doing it in other places that you have been, in particular Romania, but other countries as well that you have experience with?
I feel that obviously there is a change in a positive way, but even like 10 years ago when I was here, I always felt that there is a place for women to work, to start a business. And nowadays I see more and more business opportunities and programs for women, like mentorship programs, businesswoman councils. So definitely there is a strong emphasis on supporting businesses owned by women. And I believe that it also, I mean, part of it that setting up a business, it's easier than before, but also from the leadership, there is a strong emphasis put on really supporting women. So definitely there is a strong positive change. Even at the World Expo, Dubai 2020, World Expo, there was a women pavilion where there were a lot of networking events created for women, around women, and the country really makes space and opportunities for women in tech, women in business, and innovation in this field. In general, I think as a woman, I feel that I am in some way positively discriminated because I feel that I receive more support than a male. obviously, again, networking and a strong work ethic and all these matters, but definitely the country supports that. And also culturally, the country is quite liberal compared to what might be the perception from across Europe or other countries. But yes, definitely it's more open than how we have seen, I don't know, 10 years ago or 11 years ago that women have limited rights. And I believe it's not just in the United Emirates. The region is slowly changing. Again, Saudi's crown prince has a shift in mentality, and I think slowly they are changing not just their business environment, but the environment for women in business and in leadership. So definitely it's a positive environment for women to come and set up business and launch their products and services here.
Stereotypes are terrible, aren't they? You know, it's so it's good that you are locally sharing this all this experience that you have. We have Luis that wants to add something to this. Let me just tell you that you can send your questions through the chat that is available, and we will ask those questions to our participants. Luis, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick one. I suggest also to our business leaders in Portugal, the way to Asia maybe is not straight a direct flight. There is a lot of partnerships that you can make in Europe to arrive to Asia. I work in the European Commission as well, and I'm part of the Age 2020 jury membership, and I have been doing partnerships between the European Commission and Singaporean companies, and I have to regret, not put it in negative, but I look to the list of companies and I always look for a Portuguese company, but I could not find it. So business owners, startups, incubators, academics, think wider, go on European Commission potentials, because Northern Europe is really taking advantage from there, but we should also take advantage from Southern Europe. Brussels is a great hub to invest in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, it's very important how to change this view. And well, I lived in Japan in 1998, and what you were saying now, you know, makes me go back to that time where I was at the time saying why European companies and Portuguese companies in particular are not paying attention to these very big markets. And you know, 25 years later, we still have this discussion that just very little companies are looking into that.
Japan culture, sorry, Peter, Japan culture is so tight, so aligned with us. I mean, you can see Portuguese names in the streets in Japan, as you know, right? It's so synergy effect. We should invest it.
Yeah. And Agata brought one more country to the list, so Saudi Arabia, and we have not yet talked about India. That is also there. So it's an amazing continent, and I really hope that we can do more things there and take more advantage of what is happening there. We already have some questions. They are not easy, okay? Not because they are complex, but you will see, because it depends a lot on the companies themselves and not so much on the markets. But the question is, it's a company that produces furniture and kitchens in particular, and they are asking if we see any potential for this type of products or this type of solutions. They seem to be tailored. So it's not just, you know, standard products. If you see any opportunities for a Portuguese company like this in the country. Annabelle, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, talking about the furnitures, I think I happen to have a few companies in furniture sector, especially I even have a kitchen furniture company from Italy, which is not far from Portugal, years ago about entering into China. So it's not easy. However, my experience about the furniture export into China is that anything made in Europe, including Portugal, has already built a very good reputation here in China. I was in a furniture show for more than 10 years. Compared with a lot of my represented American products, they are trying to have their brand to be more European before they are selling into China. So based on that generic information, and also the previous experience, successful experience of helping furniture, kitchen products enter into China, I think you still have the room. However, the other thing I want to mention is that the low-cost manufactured furnitures here in China is everywhere. So make sure that your products have your own competitive edge in terms of branding, in terms of design, in terms of application, etc., etc. So like what we usually recommended for companies before they enter into China, be confident firstly, then try to find a narrow pathway to enter into this market with your specific product, not your whole product line. So you can build a huge goal, but you can build to reach that goal step by step. It's always never like a cost, it's always a good ROI, I should say. It's always a good investment return for all of our clients. The learning curve could be long, but don't be like you feel you understand market well before you enter into this market. You never understand this market. The whole Asia and the whole different culture is always ever evolving. So please make a plan and take action. Don't wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. When I was telling that this question could be a little complex, is that because we should not look only to the external analysis, so to see if there's this opportunity in the market, and we should, well, as you mentioned, Annabelle, see if we have the right product, if we have some added value, but we should also look inside to our people, to the way we are organized. I think in a way or another, you all mentioned that the particularities of those countries, and we can have two companies from the same sector. It can be, a furniture company, and one of them might be able to do business in Asia, and another one might not, for internal reasons. So my question to you is that, what do you think the companies should definitely confirm that they have and assure that they have inside them, so that they can in some way be successful in the country, in those countries? Ricardo mentioned, for example, some agility or flexibility. You all have mentioned, this capacity to develop a relationship so that you can create trust. What are other things that you can think about that companies really need to have if they want to be successful in the countries you have been working with? Yes, go ahead, Luis.
I think it's quite simple. Furniture for kitchen, for example. I know at least two Portuguese companies that work with kitchen equipments, that Vietnam is one of the major markets they have. But I also learned that the main skill that we need to have when coming in Asia is don't come with your catalogs defined, please. Come with research and development, come with customization, come with capacity and flexibility to develop a range of products for Asia requirements. As most of us said, there's many cultures within Asia culture. So attitudes, behaviors, tastes, I mean, you name it, are very different. And that is, in my opinion, where we should come from. In a way, we develop from there, and from there we can then get the pie that we mentioned before.
Yes. Ricardo, from this, you have in some way mentioned this when you said that you have to localize, you have to adapt to the different countries. Do you agree with Luis, and what else could you add?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I think that this piece of understanding the market, I think it's really important, because sometimes products and goods that we consume in a certain way in Europe might be used in completely different occasions here in Asia. And I think, you know, in the spirits industry that I work with, that's a reality. I mean, the consumption of whiskey in Japan, for example, majority is what they call the highball, is whiskey soda, which is not really the pattern of consumption in Western Europe, which is either neat or with Coca-Cola, right? And so I think understanding, coming with open mind to understand that your product might be still the same, but might be sold in a very different way or used in a very different way. I think that's really fundamental. And I think that what Luis mentioned is absolutely correct. Come in to understand. So that's what I meant in the beginning, you know, to come and spend some time in the market to observe, understand, and listen to put partners on the ground that can help you identify the opportunities.
Yes, thank you. Agota, we have another question here that relates to before and after COVID. Was there any changes that were particularly noticed by you in the country or in the region? Something that has changed and that, you know, might have created some opportunities for European companies?
Before and after COVID, I think the country adapted really quickly to the whole situation, and I think the major thing was the digitalization and innovation. So a lot of innovative ideas were introduced, which have, for example, deliveries or small things which are used every day, like, for example, ordering a taxi, or which is really basic, but the simplicity came with the digitalization. So I think definitely the country sped up this digitalization process during the COVID period, and I think overall handled the situation very well compared to some European or other countries. So again, it was a good example for adapting for like different market opportunities. As for opportunities, definitely software and digital products are one niche that I can think of now. And overall, solutions or opportunities which make everyday life easier. Here, people are quite living quite conveniently in the sense that you can order anything, which is coming up in Europe, but just like compared to Romania, in small cities you still have to call a taxi, or you still have to order differently. Here you can have delivered everything, like the doctor is on call, or consultation, or so I see more and more digital products or solutions like this in the country, and this is what I can think of right now. And I think innovative software solutions, AI, it's a big thing at the moment. Yes.
And what about the trade fairs? You know, after COVID, Dubai and Abu Dhabi are known for some international local trade fairs, but, you know, with this more broader influence. Have people returned to the trade fairs? Are they still the place to be to approach those countries?
Abu Dhabi opened, like Abu Dhabi and Dubai are two different emirates, and in some way they operate differently. So Abu Dhabi was much slower with opening up its doors. So I think Dubai opened the trade fairs and trade shows more like sooner, and Abu Dhabi opened, I think, maybe last summer or September. So there is a small delay. But in the same time, I see more and more, for example, cultural events and art events happening in Abu Dhabi. So it's more oriented towards art and cultural events. But in the same time, business is going on there too. So I think both Emirates, or all Emirates now, are open, completely open since last summer. And everything is just like before COVID. Like, things are happening. maybe there are some companies who are still in a hybrid mode, so some employees are in office, or I remember previously or before COVID, like every meeting was in person. Now online meetings are more acceptable, but still, like personal meetings are really important in this culture. And trade shows are like a huge part of this business culture.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 minutes to go. So before that, I would like to ask you, Luis, if you would choose, if I ask you to choose a country for us to pay more attention to, which country would you select?
Vietnam.
Okay.
Absolutely unbelievable. Including, sorry to just finish, including Ricardo. I don't know if you agree, Ricardo, with me. I'm also related to wine, including the wine. I mean, I go to shops everywhere in Saigon, and I pay $30, $40, $50 for a bottle of wine that in Portugal costs less than 5 or 7. And I just cannot find Portuguese wine. So winemakers, please come.
Ricardo, do you agree? Do you have any other suggestion?
Yeah, I think I agree with Vietnam as one of the kind of strong powerhouse as emerging market. I would definitely also encourage to look at Korea, Japan as more established markets, but could be quite interesting for some Portuguese industries.
Yes, more mature.
And high value markets also.
Yeah,
high value markets also. So.
Annabelle, you live in a continent, so
Yes.
what provinces would you suggest us to pay attention to within China? Because we started with Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, but then, we have Chengdu, Chongqing, where should we look at now?
Yeah, you understand China quite well. I think because we have a special connection with Portugal between China and Portugal years ago. So I believe a lot of winemakers and wine exporters has started to consider entering into China from Macau. However, Macau is quite close with Hong Kong. I should say that even though that our company is based at Shanghai, so in terms of comfort zone, if companies from Portugal consider entering into China, the Hong Kong, the Zhejiang Delta region, which including Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou area, could be a good region for them to consider. That inclusive of Macau market. However, Hong Kong is possibly a bigger market for them to consider to set a hub. If they are braver, I would recommend them to consider Shanghai, because Shanghai could cover not only northern part of China, southern part of China, as well as shifting into the Chengdu area, which in the middle part of China, where the Euro train is connecting the logistics by train from the mainland China into Europe with very better freight cost. So you don't need to cover the whole market in the beginning. Just need to select one point to start. Thank you.
Okay. Agota, 10 seconds. Emirates and Saudi Arabia?
Yes, that would be my suggestion. Saudi is changing now, and it's a really good opportunity for companies, depending on their product.
Okay, thank you very much. So we did it Japanese style. So it's 10:20. It's the right time to finish it. So thank you very much for being with us this morning. It was really fruitful, and your insights were fantastic. Being there, it really makes a difference. So thank you very much. Hope to see you very soon, and hope that you can find more Portuguese companies soon in the countries where you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's find out the main challenges that we face in Europe. João Sardo, Senior Consultant and Expert in International Business, will now lead a short market overview focused on Spain, France, and the United Kingdom.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm wondering if the sound is good.
Yes, we can hear you, João.
That's perfect. Well, first of all, I want to thank AIP for the invitation, and of course, to all the speakers, and especially to our audience watching us behind the screen. I will begin with a very brief background introduction to give you the floor to our panel, which will be followed by a moment of our Q&A. Well, it is also a pleasure for me to talk about Europe, probably because above all things, I'm European, and it is well known that Europe was built as much as possible on the basis of differences. It is true that counting to major wars in between. It is also true that European Union has been the glue that unites a vast group of European nations in the last half century, from the Atlantic to the Black Sea, from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean. No one seems to have any doubts that this glue that is holding Europe together seems to be coming apart. That's a fact. In fact, we are experiencing moments of change with global causes. First of all, the pandemics, which we are still feeling the effects, and three unavoidable elements with the epicenter in Europe, which are the war in Ukraine, of course, Brexit, and migratory crisis that unfortunately is consuming many human lives almost in a daily basis. This is Europe in 2023. Well, without further ado, I will present some indicators related to the three countries that bring us here today, so that we can contextualize the individual reality of each one, but also the differences between them. So I will be sharing a short presentation now. Please let me know if it will be seen for everyone in the room. So some data about Europe. Europe has 44 countries, so 27 countries are part of European Union. It is, I wouldn't say, not a big amount of people are living in Europe. So 9.6% of people are living in Europe, which is nothing, almost nothing comparing to other regions, namely Asia and South America. And Europe growth 1.9% in 2022 last year in terms of GPA. Some few data about each country. So we'll be speaking today about three different countries: Spain, France, and UK. These three countries are some of the biggest economies in Europe, starting with Spain. So Spain is the fourth largest economy in the European Union. We will have time to deepen some cultural aspects, but Spain is not only Spain as a country, so there are many Spains inside Spain. So we can see it actually with the language that people in Spain are speaking. So Castilian, Catalan, Galician, Basque, and Aragonese. So we can see that Spain is quite different, 4 times bigger than Portugal in terms of dimension, geographically speaking, and of course in terms of population. In 2020, Spain had a contraction of the economy by 10.8% as a result of the impact of the pandemics. In 2021, GDP grew by 5%, driven by strong recovery of the private consumption. So, very important note. I underscore this. Portugal, the main trade of Portugal is Spain. So we used to say that Spain is Portugal natural market for obvious reasons. So they are our neighbors. It will be actually easier, ideally speaking, to trade with Spain. But there are some obstacles as well. We will be for sure deep in this topic with our speakers after. So in terms of opportunities, we should actually list some important topics. So e-commerce activities, pharmaceutical products, information technology, data processing, furniture, namely home furniture, and we know that Portugal has a huge capacity in terms of producing quality home furniture. Also mobility, namely vehicles powered by clean energies, agri-food products, namely the ones that are differentiated and competitive. Going to France, so France has a population almost 70 million people, so it's Europe's fourth most populous country. It's the second largest economy, well, immediately after, not immediately, but after Germany. Germany is by far the largest economy in Europe. In terms of opportunities, we can mention chemicals, information technology, namely related to artificial intelligence and robotics, plastics and derivative articles, also mobility, namely vehicles powered by clean energies, e-commerce activities, and agri-food products, as well, the ones that are differentiated and competitive. It's important to mention that there are relevant trade fairs being held in France. So France is well known as a country with referential exhibitions. The Portuguese companies know it, but namely in the food and agro-food sectors and construction sectors, there are important fairs to be visited and to be present so that people can show their products and selection and solutions. Finally, a short overview about the UK. So the UK is the third most populous country in Europe. It's not part of the European Union anymore. This is not a detail. So it was a member of the European Union, but left in 31 of January in 2020. This is one of the biggest challenges for Europe. This is unavoidable. The Brexit. So the country continues to present business great opportunities even before leaving European Union. So it's almost impossible not to count with the UK for European trade. In terms of business opportunities, we can mention pharmaceutical products. There is still a huge demand for the construction and the building material sectors, health and life sciences, information technology, namely related to digital and network solutions, renewable energies, and also e-commerce. As you can see, e-commerce is always present. So this digital transition is probably, I would say, the most important area of business, and it will be the most important area of business in the next years. Well, a short quote before sharing our session with our speakers. So it's important to maintain good public policy coordination. It will be crucial to manage the economic impact of the war. So we should highlight the way how European countries will be harmonizing their foreign policies. This is very important, and I think this will be the key element so that Portuguese companies, not only the Portuguese companies, but European companies can succeed in the next years. So I think we can go for the round table.
Thank you, João. Thank you. The following discussion panel will be moderated by João Sardo and will count on the participation of Stefan Montalbano, Eduardo Brandão, Sérgio Monteiro, and Hugo de Souza. Stefan Montalbano has 25 years of experience in coaching and advising companies from different sectors in France and Eastern Europe countries. Since 2005, he has helped and support more than 700 SMEs, developing services as distributor, supplier and partner selection, trade missions, market studies, business development solutions, among others. Eduardo Brandão was during more than 25 years responsible for regional businesses on the German chemical company BASF, and he is currently developing activities as business advisor. He has relevant experience in international management in Europe and Americas, developing and implementing growth strategies to achieve defined goals, having also participated in mergers and acquisition activities and integration processes. Sérgio Monteiro has 25 years of experience in operations, supply chain, IT, and executive management. He worked in several recognized and international companies like Airbus, Altran, Infosys, among others. A couple of years ago, he founded his own consulting firm, and last year he created his first startup, specialized in developing software with blockchain technology. Hugo de Souza is a digital entrepreneur and leader in corporate innovation. Hugo leads Innovation by Kaizen and teaches strategic business analytics in London at Bayes Business School from City University of London. His career includes a diverse list of renowned companies, consultants, and public service entities. During the roundtable, please feel free to submit questions through the chat.
Okay, thank you, Mariana. And thank you all for your presence. It's a pleasure to count on you with your precious inputs. So I will explain a little bit how I will try to moderate our session. I will start actually with the first round of questions that will be almost the same for everyone. And then I will move to a second round, the final round of questions, which will be individual for each one of you, related to your experience in the country. So starting with the pandemics and most recently with the war in Ukraine, I have a common question to all of you. What, in your opinion, what are the main challenges that companies are facing nowadays? How do you see the recovery from the pandemics and the effects of the war in Ukraine in terms of business? Well, I think we can start by our Spanish, let's say, our Spanish or the people that are actually based on Spain. So how do you see it? We can start actually, Eduardo, if you want to start. Eduardo is based on Spain, in Barcelona, and Sergio is based in Madrid, which is also interesting for us to understand a little bit some differences in Spain. But I would start by you, Eduardo. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank to the organization for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, the pandemic and the war, of course, I think they have affected all the countries, especially in Spain. The pandemic affected a lot the tourism. I think it was by far the most affected sector in Spain, because the movement of the people were limited, and so during these fatal 2 years, Spain suffered a lot. Of course, having the retail and trade also to do with that. Also, in a second step, trade and retail were suffering also. I have to say that nowadays the recovery was fantastic, which means that after Spain had a very positive work facing the pandemic, with all the things that they have done to stop and to be able to manage this situation. So the tourism, in fact, this year already is reaching the normal levels before the pandemic. So in all the economy is coming back. I have to say that in spite that the other sector was not so much affected as the tourism, all the economy suffered, which means there are data about the companies that ended activity after the pandemic season, and it's sad to see that a part of the economic tissue of the country was wrapped from the activity, which is causing at the moment still some hiccups, not related with the pandemic, but of course they were the consequence of the pandemic. In terms of the war, I have to say that the war was directly, because Spain doesn't have too much dependency on oil and gas from Russia, was not so much of that. It's only because being Spain part of the European Union, of course, the sanctions made that at least the business between the two countries, Russia and Spain, were stopped, and also that the evolution of some prices of some energetic products in Spain were following the same path in Europe. So in conclusion, yes, there was effect, but more related that Spain as member of the European Union had to follow the steps. No? I leave the word for Sergio now, so then I will explain all.
Thank you, Eduardo, for your input. Sergio, what can you tell us about a little bit about it, please?
Okay, so good morning, everyone, from the sunny Madrid. First of all, also as Eduardo, to thank everyone and to organization for the invitation to be a speaker in this summit, and so I can give my insights about the Spanish market. About your first question, for me, I think that it is no doubt that the main challenge is about optimizing costs. Many things happening in these 3 years since pandemic, and there are many companies that they could not afford the huge impact in the costs because of the inflation about the fuel, electricity, raw materials, etc. And we need to know that affected all the supply chain, not only the agriculture, but starting there and the industry, to primary sector, no, and that reached to second and other third sector. About the companies, from one end, you could not stop these increasing costs. It was out of control, right? But in the other end, many companies were tied up with mid and long-term contracts with their clients. And with these long-term contracts, they could not increase sales price. So what happened here? If you cannot reduce the costs, on the other side, it was increasing, and you could not raise your sales price. So three things happen. Or you can close your company. Many companies closed here, fire people, like the multinationals have done, no? Or get help by the governments. For example, the technological companies today are still firing people, their staff, 5 to 10%, like Microsoft, Facebook, and many others. They need to adapt the resources to the economy needs. And if the economy is not growing, or it is resilient to grow, you need to adapt. So this is yet a result of these last 3 years of crisis, no? So I think that is the main challenge, to control the costs and to adapt to this new reality, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I will now pass the word to our French representative, Stéphane. Welcome to our session.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Stéphane.
I think, do you see me? Yeah?
Yes, there is some kind of cuts in the image, but
Yeah.
we can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, maybe I will cut off the image, okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Regarding French company after COVID situations and the war in Ukraine, French company are facing a few problems right now. First problem is energy cost increase. For example, some French company have reduced their production, or they have stopped their reduction. Companies that are involving in using gas, for example, glass factory, they have decreased their productions. Is the first consequence for French company. The second consequence is the lack of raw material and some products in the French market. For example, as you know, France is a big producer of wine and spirits, and a lot of companies involved in production of wine and spirit now are facing some lack of glass bottle. They can't find in the French market in Europe, so they are sourcing abroad now, and they are looking for new supplier. And due to the COVID situation, also one of the consequences for French company, what is that they want now to diversify their country supply. Many French companies were working in Asia, for example, in China. Due to the logistic problem, now they are looking for new countries for subcontracting or for sourcing. And what we call in France proche import, near import, is very interesting for a French company right now.
Okay, Stéphane, thank you for your insight about France nowadays, the problems, difficulties. And now, Hugo, very welcome to you as well. It will be a pleasure to listen to you. Well, the UK is facing also new challenges with the Brexit. So the war and the pandemics, what can you tell us, Hugo? Welcome.
First of all, thank you for the invite. It's not just Brexit. Maybe it started with Brexit, then COVID-19, then Ukraine. So we live in a crisis, but all of us, not just here in the UK. I will try to share a few insights, a few numbers. So the UK's economy grew by around 4% in 2022. Okay, after a growth rate of 7.6% in 2021. So you can imagine what this means. In the record 11% decline in 2020. So due to the economic fallout caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So during the provided time period, The biggest annual fall in gross domestic product prior to 2020 occurred in 2009, when the UK economy contracted by around 4.5%. And this was at the height of the global financial crisis of late 2000s. Just to give you an idea, between 1949 and 2020, this was the year with the highest annual GDP growth rate. The year with the highest annual GDP growth rate was in 1973, when the UK economy grew by 6.5%. So yeah, we are facing a lot of problems. Unemployment somehow is low, but the lack of expertise is now massive, in particular after COVID-19, when many people went back home, okay, to their home countries. Okay, so maybe because many were foreigners, as we all know, in the uncertainty around Brexit, it means that today is very hard to find expertise, but not just let's say engineers or computer scientists or things like that, but also people to work in factories that were foreigners and went back. In many of these activities can't be performed remotely. So the internet is not a solution for everything. If we take into consideration the cost of living crisis that we are living as well at the moment, energy crisis as well. I was paying 2 years ago around £1,300 per year in energy. Now the bill is around £3,500 per year. So the energy cost spiked. Okay, we have strikes at the moment. Young doctors, for instance, last week, this week, supply chain is broken since 2000 in 2020. We have asylum seekers as well trying to come to the UK. So we are facing all of these challenges. I think the UK is not special. All other countries are facing somehow the same problems at the moment. But I also think that this is an opportunity to innovate, to rethink how we make business. Okay, to come up with new business models. And sometimes it does take a punch in the stomach to rethink our value proposition and what we need to do to adapt to this new world. Because as I said, it's not just here in the UK, it's everywhere. And this might represent an opportunity to make business here in the UK, or for companies in the UK to make business abroad, or to make business differently here in the UK by coming up with a new and improved business model.
Thank you for your insights. Actually, I will have to make this question to the rest of the speakers, specifically related to Brexit. So starting with Spain, Sergio and Eduardo, in your opinion, because we are here today speaking about two countries that are part of the European Union and one who isn't anymore. So related to Spain, how did Brexit affected Spanish market? What can you tell us about it? This question is really specifically related to Brexit. Eduardo, you can actually share something with us regarding Brexit in Spain?
Well, the Brexit in Spain affected for sure the exports to the UK. There are some sectors that were let's say having good part of their business there, like agro-food business in Spain, and so they had not to end, but there is always the uncertainty, so they had to choose other markets to cover possible affection of the Brexit. No, and then all as we know, UK had always a very strong financial sector. So all which is investment and real estate, and also people English people living in Spain, all that was affected, especially due to the uncertainty. There are news of some people, English people that were living in Spain that returned to the country. There was also some hiccups about how how the way of paying the pensions of these English people living in Spain were affected or not. So all these sectors was affected. I mean, but I can give the word to Sergio to give also some feedback.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sergio.
Well, my comments goes in the same line as Eduardo just said. I think that Brexit affected mostly the import and export of goods. As Hugo commented before, the supply chain is broken, right? About multinational companies that are based in UK, I didn't see many companies leaving the country, not yet, but maybe Hugo can give more insights about this, no? Talking again about import and exports, many companies, especially those dedicated to e-commerce, decided to change the market, looking for especially less bureaucracy, because this bureaucracy, which represented a huge cost in their sales, no? So they had to look for different markets within the European Union markets. After all, it is an open market, no? Inside the European Union. With respect to consulting service companies, I didn't see much these great impacts because of the Brexit. I can give you an example. In my consulting firm, my first contract was with an UK company in 2020. There were some doubts about taxes and legal aspects, but information provided by UK and European Union was clear enough. And after all, you just send an invoice and you charge, because we are talking about the service, not the good itself, no? So at the moment, no, there were no problems about this, no? But I think that now the multinationals have adapted to this new reality, and they have started to normalize their activities within the UK, just like us working with other country outside the European Union. Let me give you an example of Airbus. In 2018, they threatened to leave UK, because you know that Airbus is a consortium between Spain, France, UK, and Germany. So they threatened to leave UK, because of the Brexit. But now, 4 years later, they are telling that they will keep the production in UK. So we see that the multinationals are being taking careful on their strategy and decisions. And I think that they are waiting to see what happens. There is a new government in place in UK. They want to see if they can avoid the hard Brexit. And that, I think, is the key to avoid the hard Brexit. But let's see what happens now, how the markets will adapt to this new reality.
Thank you, Sergio. So I will now give the word to Stéphane. There is recently a summit between UK and France. We know that because of they are neighboring countries, there are huge relations and also competition between France and UK. Stéphane, what's the impact of Brexit in France nowadays?
The impact of Brexit in France is, as in Spain, is mainly for import and export. The volume of import and export have decreased, okay, because of UK was a huge market for French companies. And one consequence also of the Brexit is administrative cost and paper for French company. As it was told for e-commerce, for example, if you are now importing some products from Britannic chains, you must pay taxes. So it was not the case before Brexit. Another consequence is for traveling, okay, because as you know, we have a train line between Paris and London. So it's more complicated now for traveling. You may have your ID or your passport for traveling to UK, and it's the same for British people. Okay. On the other hand, what France tried to do, because London is a financial place, Paris tried to attract investors in Paris in the finance sector, in the financial sector. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan.
And the last problem, which stay with the UK, is a problem regarding fishery quotas. Okay, because a lot of French boats was fishing in Britannic Sea, and they are still looking for a license in order to fish in Britannic Sea now.
Thank you, Stefan, for your insights. I will try to move a little bit our conversation for Portuguese companies. So, how can Portuguese companies stand in the markets where you are based? I mean, in other words, what advantages Portuguese companies have over their international competitors? Eduardo, you know, you have huge experience with Portuguese companies, of course, and with the Spanish market. How do you see the opportunities for Portuguese companies nowadays in Spain?
Well, first of all, it's important to say that Portugal has big advantages toward other countries. I think that the only one that perhaps has that advantage too is France, which is the location. So we are a natural market for Spain, as also Spain is a natural market for, like you already said it, to Portuguese companies. Another thing that and this is important because if like Sergio was saying, that supply chain organizations are suffering, being very close to your market where you want to sell, it's important. And so I think Portuguese companies had that opportunity to at least be close to the Spanish market rather than other countries. No. Another thing that I think that is a cultural advantage, and maybe all of us that already have been in Spain, I'm in Spain by 25 years, is that the Portuguese normally that we don't need to learn the Spanish language in school. We are correcting our Portuguese, and step by step we are speaking Spanish with the Spanish people, and that's very important for them.
At least I'm sorry, Eduardo, at least Portuñol.
Yes, at the beginning always, but
it helps, of course.
After a while, you are already able to be in close contact with the people, and Spanish people is I heard our predecessors in Asia saying that the contact is very important. In Spain is also very important. You cannot sell things by email. With the digital transformation now, there are lots of chains of e-commerce, but nevertheless, to make real businesses and business that affect a company that wants to enter the market, of course, you have to have local contacts, even because Spain has several realities, several regional governments and several cultures. So it's very important that you are able to contact. And I think that the language is important. Another thing is that the Portuguese companies being so close, and by the structure of I don't speak about the big companies, because speaking about the big companies, it's more or less entering an European market, which means the bigger Portuguese companies already are acting in the Spanish market. I'm referring to the medium and small companies. Maybe the structure of costs that they have in Portugal allows them to try to be competitive in the Spanish market. And that's, I think, where the key is, because the Spanish market is perhaps one of the most open ones, even all over the world, which means doing business in Spain, it's not difficult, at least in terms of the trade. So you have to be competitive. You don't think that by being a neighbor, you have the advantage. You have to show it in the market, otherwise the Spanish people will not buy your products. And it's not because they don't like Portuguese products, it's simply because you are not competitive. So that's a key question that the Portuguese companies have to take in consideration. But I think there are lots of possibilities. I think that with all the changes that Spain is passing, the consequence of the difficulties that Spain had during the past 3 years, I think that there are key sectors where Spain is a land of opportunities. I think technology is one of them. I think Sergio will speak a little bit more about that. I think that also some typical businesses of Spain, like the agro-food business and also the tourism, are sectors that will continue to grow, definitely, because they have good products, they have good sun, they have all what it needs. I think it's really a question that the companies that come from Portugal, they know that they are neighbors, but they must be competitive. They must be aligned with what the Spanish market needs. I say this because by my German background of work, now in the past few years, I worked more with Germans entering in Spain and Portugal than rather Portuguese companies entering Spain. And really, when Germans come to enter a market, they really are professionals doing it, because they have to be competitive all over the world, because they are one of the major countries exporting goods to other countries. So we have to have the same mentality. I know that Portuguese are not Germans, but we have to put ourselves in a position that I want to sell there, so I have to make my proposal enough competitive so that my customers in Spain accept my proposals. That's my saying.
Thank you, Eduardo. Sergio, you have also a big experience in Spain. You even created a company during pandemics, which is very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about this question? So, opportunities for Portuguese companies, namely in the digital field that you know very well.
Yeah, in the business opportunities, I would say there are 4 main big opportunities here in Spain. First of one is the technological companies, startups. Spain is very friendly for these kind of companies. And they've created a very good ecosystem for this kind of companies, with fundings, with subventions, with a lot of help, co-workings everywhere. I think that the ecosystem here is some years advanced compared with Portugal. I think that is one of the main business opportunities. The second one is online service, e-commerce. People are shopping online more and more, but more and more. I see this difference when I go to Portugal and visit my family. I see this kind of difference, you know, and I think that Spain is more advanced also in this online service, e-commerce. If you buy, for example, something in Amazon, you can receive it in the same day at home, the same day. Includes supermarket store, you know, that is awesome. That is a change of paradigm. This. The third business opportunity is into renewable energy, but it is a huge markets, huge opportunities here. Many European Union funds to invest in this market. So if you have a good business in Portugal and you want to internationalize in this, in energy, bring it on. And the fourth, it is about environment, CO2 markets. This is the new trendy business. If you have a good business idea about this, you should explore it very seriously. You know, we are going to talk about this in the next year's CO2 market. So I would say these 4 markets, business opportunities to explore.
Thank you, Sergio. Time is running. The conversation is being very interesting. Stefan, well, the same question to you from the experience you have from Portuguese companies. What's the opportunities in France? What should they do to better approach and access the French market?
I think that Portuguese company have two main advantages for the French market. First one is proximity with France. Okay, as I already told, now French companies are looking for a new supplier in nearest Europe, and Portugal have a card to play, and it can be very interesting for Portuguese companies to enter French market. This is the first one, and the second one, of course, comparing to French companies, Portuguese companies have a labor cost which is very interesting for French companies which are looking for subcontracting or for suppliers. The sector which can be interesting for Portuguese company are textile sectors. There is a lot of French companies now that they are looking for a new supplier. It can be also food and agriculture sector, and it can be also wood sector for furniture. There is a big request in France for such a product right now. And don't forget also, so France is a second large economy in European Union, but it's also the first touristic country in the world, with around 80 million visitors each year. So it's a huge market.
Thank you, Stefan, for your insights. Now, passing the word to Hugo, I guess labor costs are also important for Portuguese companies in terms of the approaching of the UK market, the British market. Who, from your knowledge from Portugal and Portuguese companies, what can you tell us about it?
Your question is regarding the labor cost here in UK?
No. I mean, I was just relating the intervention of Stefan. I think labor costs are also important for UK when they are facing Portuguese companies entering the British market. So my question is, what are the opportunities for Portuguese companies in the UK, and what should they do to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's quite obvious that the field of technology in digital is in demand at the moment, I guess, everywhere. So I guess there's an opportunity to establish this, for instance, a small office here in the UK where the business people will be located. It's very important to live in the country where you want to make business. I think it's not enough to come here 2 or 3 days and then go back. Because if you are in sales, you need to understand the challenges that the country is facing. So you need to be here, or else you are treated like a tourist, or there's an uncertainty if you are planning to live, and that's not good for business. Then I guess that, for instance, in IT, which is digital IT, which is an area I've been working in the past 20 years, more senior people can be here maybe 1 week per month, and that's enough. And then we have more junior profiles working remotely, which is quite common. It's not after COVID. In the UK, remote work started many years ago, even for people that are British. So commuting to London on Monday, then going back on Wednesday was quite normal. It still is. So I guess there's an opportunity for small, medium-sized companies to be here, have the salespeople, as I said, then try to establish a contract and have a few workloads being sent back to Portugal. In other areas, I guess there's a need for expertise, as I said, to automate a lot of stuff, because there's a lack of skilled people and unskilled people as well. So if your value proposition is around automation, radical cost efficiency, factories, anything, supermarkets, anything, if you can help on that, I guess there's a massive opportunity. Then it's important, I guess this is also a reality in other countries, to know the difference between London and outside of London. So London is a reality, and I guess it's a unique reality in Europe. 9 million people living in one city, which is quite a specific ecosystem. And then outside of London, and that's a different country with a different reality. So London is quite open to make business with anyone. Okay, everyone is accepted. There's a culture of even if I don't like you, it's okay. If you can help me to make money, let's work together. So it's very easy to work in London. Outside of London, you might find a few challenges. So you need more time and money maybe to make business. But in London, if you have something good to show us, I guess it will be pretty straightforward to come up with something. But you need to be here. When people ask me, should I move to London? Yeah, definitely. You need to move to London. You can't be here on Monday, then go back, and maybe 1 month you are here. You don't make business remotely. First, you need to establish a relationship with a person. I guess these are the basics of sales. And then it's okay. Then they will trust. In comparing to Portugal, there's a major difference, okay? And I've started a few companies in Portugal as well. Here, they pay on time, okay? So we send the invoice, we get the money. Usually, it works pretty well, okay? In Portugal, we send the invoice, in maybe 90 days, we get the money, or 180, or we need to spend 12 months going to court, to tribunal, maybe to try to get the money back. So if cash flow is if you are worried about cash flow, I guess UK is still a good place to make business, because the culture is we buy, we pay. Okay, in Portugal, it isn't. So sometimes it's not just about the margin, it's about when you get the money for the work you are providing, and that's still an asset here in UK. There's a culture of paying. Okay.
Thank you for your insights. Actually, you mentioned one very important thing. It's very easy to travel in Europe. You can have meetings actually in the same day in 2 different countries. For instance, if you are in Belgium, in the same day you can go to the Netherlands and UK. And this is, I think, a major difference between the rest of the continents in the world. I mean, it's quite easy to travel. It's quite cheap. So no excuses to not travel and to see people, because it's always important, of course, to see people, to talk with people directly. So my next question is a little bit related with the previous one. So what practical advices could you give to Portuguese companies that are starting to approach your markets? I mean, in terms of preparations, what should they do to be well succeeded in your markets? Starting with Spain, Eduardo, what can you tell us about it?
Well, the Spanish company environment it's like Portugal, but it's a little bit different. Why? Because Portugal is more consolidated as a country, and Spain as, like I said, 17 regional governments, and then that can be hard for a company that wants to make the business all over the country, how to structure their business in Spain. So first of all, for the companies that come from Portugal, they have to think where the main markets are, where should be the place to put the company. One important thing in this sense is the taxation is different from the different governments. There are competition between the governments in Spain, the regional governments, to get investment from not only from Portugal, but also from other countries. So the way that you are going to put your company in Spain will have to do a lot with that, which means where the markets are and what is the best place for me to put the company. I had the experience of having plants in several regional governments, and the relations were completely different. So we have to take care about this. Spain is not the same country everywhere. And I think the second thing is, in spite that there is lots of human resources in Spain and they can effectively work for your company, I think it's important that you have Portuguese people involved. Why? Because the entrepreneurship of a Spanish worker decreases a lot if he is a worker or if he is the owner of the company. So he works well, he does very well the work, but the entrepreneurship is lower, which means he only does what you tell you. And so if really you want to have a drive business of your company in Spain, you have to put people in Spain. I think it's a must, because I have seen lots of businesses of Portuguese companies that didn't develop simply because they were, let's say, managed by distance. And if you manage by distance, you lose the touch and you lose the reality that you are living day by day in Spain. So I think it's important that you create the structure that you created, in a sense that you are able really to manage it. Because if you are staying in Portugal and hoping that the business is going to roll in Spain, you will have most of the times, or at least no result, or not the result that you wish for.
Thank you, Eduardo, for your insights. Sergio, what advices could you give to Portuguese companies to better approach the Spanish market?
Well, João, I can resume in 3 advices. First, it is about the markets. Let's see that the Spanish economy is almost six times bigger than Portugal. If we compare, for example, just the Madrid region, the GDP is almost the same as Portugal, the entire Portugal. So, and this also happens in Catalonia. The GDP is the same as Portugal as country, you know? So this makes a very attractive market. But in the other hand, it also makes it very, very competitive. The competitors here are very fierce, no? So my advice is to pay special attention in your business plan into competitors analysis. And if needed, hire a local firm to specialize in this, to analyze the market before coming. You need to understand how the competitors work in Spain. If you think in a business, there are already 20, 30 or companies doing the same. So you need to make sure you have the right approach before coming to Spain. But it is very attractive. That's why there are many companies here in Spain. No? Second one is to find the right partners before coming to Spain. I think that can make the difference also. To advise of these experts can make the difference. So don't come alone. That's why there are organizations like Market Access to help internalization and many other. Do that. Don't forget your ego or company ego and find the right partner. I think that can make a difference. And the third one, I think it is also an opportunity for the Spanish companies. There is a scarce of talent in Spain. I worked many years in consulting firms, and I remember it is very difficult to find the right talents, especially in IT. And I think that in Portugal, we have that knowledge, we have that people, we have that resources, you know. So for the technological companies, or you have a solution there, you can work here in Spain and Portugal with your branch here, you know. And I think that is also an opportunity to explore. So those are my 3 advices for the Portuguese companies.
Thank you, Sergio. Stefan, so the same question to you, related to France. What Portuguese companies should do to better prepare their approach to the market?
I have a few advice for a Portuguese company in order to prospect and to enter French market. First one is to be patient, because most of the French company are SMEs, are small companies. It means that a lot of company are managed by a general manager, but this general manager will also be involved in commercial department. So we have a medium-sized company is the first. The second one is to choose the good channel. For example, if you are in the FMCG or textile sector, to choose the good channel to enter the French company. If you are a food company, you have to choose if you want to find and to work with an importer or wholesaler, or if you want to work with big retail chain, as we had in France. like Auchan, Leclerc, Intermarché, and so on. The third advice I can give to Portuguese company is to have somebody in their team or that speak French, because all the French companies are not speaking English or very bad English. So this is very important for enter French company, I think, and it's also a cultural subject. Okay, and last advice I can give to Portuguese company. In France, we are also considered like Spanish, Spain or Italy, like Latin countries. So it means that we are not working like German people. Okay, for example, we have if we have a meeting at 10, you can be sure that people will come at 10 past 10 or 10 past 15. It's usually in France. So we are also a Latin company, a Latin country, like in Spain, in Portugal, and Italy. So.
Merci beaucoup, Stéphane. Thank you very much for your inputs. Hugo, the same question to you.
Okay, I have only one piece of advice, because many of these advices are common, is don't be the jack of all trades, which is something very typical in the Portuguese people. We want to be the best doing everything, okay? One of my former managers once asked me, Hugo, what do you want to be famous for? So what's your value proposition? And I know that the Portuguese market is small, so sometimes companies have 5, 10 value propositions, okay? So in the UK, it's quite confusing if you come here and you are like, I'm good doing 10 different things. No, you are not good. You are a jack of all trades. So if in Portugal, it's good to be considered a jack of all trades, in the UK, isn't, okay? So you need to be careful how you introduce yourself. What is your value proposition? And that's it, okay? Pick one thing, choose carefully, because you want to be famous for that thing, or else you have a stamp right here, jack of all trades. Don't work with this guy. He's not good doing anything, because he's trying to do everything. This is my recommendation.
Thank you. Out of the box, but thank you. This is very important. Thank you for your insight. Well, the time is really running. I will actually skip the questions. I mean, that I had prepared specifically for each country, because indeed, in fact, we already talked about it in some of the topics. We actually have 2 questions from our audience. I will actually read it for you. The first is quite specific, and it is related to a specific sector. So how do we find companies that want to work with custom kitchen furniture? Can you give me some advice? So this is specifically related to custom kitchen furniture. So please, if you want to share your inputs about it.
I will make a list of decorators, try to reach out directly online, okay? Because usually these people are well connected with others, so I will start from there.
Eduardo and Sergio.
Yeah, Sergio, please.
Yes, I think that I would also start something like Hugo said. There are many franchising in Spain that produces mostly in the north of Spain, in Galicia, for example, which are dedicated to furniture. So maybe I would start there and to look for companies and to present your proposition of value of the kitchen furniture. Because the quality in Portugal of furniture is very, very good, and the Spanish people, they like good quality. So maybe I would start by there.
Well, only to add, in Spain, there is information available about this kind of markets. You have a specialized Ali market review that even you can buy the market about this kind of stuff. You see what are the major users, the major buyers, the major producers. So you have an overview of the market and you can start working.
Thank you, Eduardo. Stefan, so what can you tell us about it?
In France, we have several retail chains involved in kitchen furnitures. like Aviva, Cuisine Schmidt, and so on. They are a huge retail network. And in the other hand, we have also the network of decorator and architect, which are more involved in upper class furniture.
Thank you, Stefan. So the last question is inflation, which is very important. We didn't specifically deepen this topic, but the question is, how do you deal with inflation in the countries you are based on? Is there any strategic change to be done?
Well, Spain is at the moment struggling, I think, like the other rest of the countries in Europe. The inflation became a difficulty for the persons and a political discussion for the politicians. And so they are trying to, in the middle of this discussion, they are trying to take some measures, like some defining products that the supermarkets will have to decrease as much as possible the prices. But I think that, like we know in economy, inflation is a little bit part of a cost thing, but then ends up also to be a mindset thing. So if you have, there are several companies, I think that companies in not only big companies, but even the retail companies and whatsoever, that the dynamics was to increase prices because the costs were increasing, and now they are not able to stop this effect. I think the government is trying to do some measures, but it is a way that will be long, which it cannot be cut easily, because I even think that some prices will not decrease from the level that they have already.
Thank you, Eduardo. Sergio, what can you tell us about inflation in Spain?
One of the first measures is to cut off unnecessary costs. Start if we have a big team, home working, cut off the rent of the office. If we have cars, stop the renting, cut off unnecessary costs. Leave the increase of sales price to the end, because if not, you can lose customers, you can reduce your incoming. So I would start there, cut off unnecessary costs.
Thank you, Sergio. Stefan, your insights about inflation in France, please.
In France, we have the chance that the state, the government takes some financial measures in order to help SMEs company and to help also inhabitants in France. For example, for bakery sector that are using a lot of energy, they have support them, and they have fixed price for gas, for example. So we have this change in France. It's why today France is one of the countries in Europe with the lower inflation for the moment, because year to year the inflation in France is now around 6.3%. But it will be maybe increased, because 2 weeks ago, for example, in food sectors, they finished and they conclude negotiations between the food producer and retail chains. So maybe the price of food will be increased in the next few months.
Thank you, Stefan. And finally, Hugo, some words about inflation in the UK.
Inflation is around 10% at the moment, in particular due to the spike in consumer goods. In the supply chain is still broken. So recommendations, well, I'm not an economist, so I will say if you have a company, pick your customers carefully, because if you need to borrow money, the rate is quite high at the moment. So pick the customers that you can target, if you need to make big investments, if you don't have the money to do it, I'm not sure you should go forward. So be careful about the customers you are working. This is my recommendation. For families, I can't tell much. The government is trying to help. Many people are moving abroad or moving from London to the interior. Okay, this is happening at the moment, promoting remote work. I guess we are all doing the same in Europe. But of course, if you have a big office, you can't just tell people go home, because you still need to pay for the office. You will need to downsize. All the recommendations are the same as my colleagues panel said before.
Thank you, Hugo. So 2 minutes ahead, our schedule is not so bad. So again, I'd like to thank you for your presence, first to our audience and the speakers, and of course the faceless team in the backstage who gave us all the necessary support. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. Hope we can draw from here the necessary positivity to face the next years in Europe. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye.
Obrigado.
Thank you, João, and thank you to all the speakers who shared their knowledge about Europe. We will finish now our summit with Africa, a diverse continent offering human and natural resources. Ana Pinto, Business Unit Manager and International Business Consultant at Market Access, will do now a short market overview about South Africa, Morocco, and Tunisia.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I believe we are all still in the morning in the majority of countries, but otherwise afternoon for the rest of us. Thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you for being here. I will start with a small introduction on the Africa as a continent, of course, and then speak a little bit on insights on South Africa, Tunisia, and Morocco. So I will share a small presentation. Okay, so I hope that you will all be able to see. Just asking for a few moments so that I can put it on big screen. Sorry for this. Okay, just 1 second. Oh, sorry. it's making a mess on my computer. If I'm asking you, yes. So now it should be okay. So thank you once again for being here. We will now start with the presentation on Africa. Okay. Today we will target, as I said, the countries of Morocco, Tunisia, and South Africa. And between the main topics that we will address, we will be talking about trade between Portugal and those territories, but not only, and of course other European countries as well. Business opportunities in these countries, North Africa as a technological hub, and South Africa as the main developed economy in Africa. Okay. So starting as a briefly approach on the continent, so Africa has 24 countries, so a quite large amount. The majority of them are quite expensive in terms of geographical areas, so quite large. In terms of foreign direct investment to African countries, we hit a record of 83 billion in 2021, the double amount that was reported to 2020. So quite a big impact on foreign direct investment. We will discuss this a little bit further as well. In terms of population, it represents 17%, a little bit more of 17%. So we can say that definitely has still a bigger opportunity to increase and develop. So we would need to keep a track on this, of course. And it represents only 3.7% of the PIB growth in 2022. So this all represents a little bit of what we have been talk about as Africa. As we know, it's an abundant natural resources, actually, but much of its economy has remained predominantly agricultural, and subsistence farming still engage more than 60% of the population. with the exception, of course, of these 3 countries actually that we are going to speak about, such as South Africa and the countries of North Africa, which are we can include Tunisia and Morocco, all of which have diversified production systems. The economy of most of Africa can be characterized as underdeveloped. This is also why we can see that despite the fact that they represent a big part of the population, with more than 70% of the population, in terms of representative in the PIB of the world, it can be a little bit more less demonstrating, let's say. Okay, so I think that if we talk really about the continent of Africa, we definitely can understand that this is a continent of opportunities. A lot of countries are still developing, in the phase of developing their own economy, so a lot of opportunities can be found there, but also it's a continent with many risks. That will, of course, depend on the country that we are mentioning, because it's a very diverse economy. So talking a little bit more about South Africa, you can find here some data actually about the country, but it's important to say that the economy of South Africa was actually revolutionized in the late 19th century when diamonds and gold were discovered there. Extensive investment from foreign capital followed in those years, and even in the years since World War II, the country has established a well-developed manufacturing base, and it has experienced actually a high variable growth rates, including some years when its growth rate was actually one of the highest among the economies in the world. Nowadays, and also a lot because of its dependency on foreign trade, South Africa economy is sensitive to global economic conditions. But of course, almost of the countries are right now. Precious metals and base metals have been leading exports, as agricultural goods and military equipment also play an important role. The country's major imports are chemical products and motor vehicles. And South Africa's main trading partners include China, United States, Germany, and Japan, which is quite interesting also to analyze and to see also the distance that we can be that we can see with the European Union, for instance. Maybe this is something that we can explore a little bit more, and as Portugal, as country, and Portuguese companies can explore a little bit more as well. Regional trade in Southern Africa is also increasingly, especially through the Southern African Development Community. Since the end of the apartheid, actually, South African companies have thought to expand investment in other African countries, particularly in mining and commercial activity, okay, which are also quite important in the country. As we can see in terms of resource and power in South Africa, we can watch a very rich variety of minerals in addition to diamonds and gold. The country also contains reserves of iron, magnesium, platinum, chromium, uranium, and even titanium and other materials as well. Agriculture is also a major importance to South Africa that produce a significant portion of the exports of the country, but also contributes greatly to domestic economy, especially as an employer. Regarding the manufacturing, the major sectors that we can watch are also related to food, special food processing, of course, and the production of textiles, metal, and chemicals. Okay, so this is a little bit what an overall on South Africa. Related to Tunisia as well. Here you can see regarding the 3 countries that we are mentioning as well, in terms of population is the smallest one, the other 2 being South Africa, the biggest one actually. But in terms of economy as well, we can see here a little difference. Also, it has very rich cultural inheritance actually as well, and also a lot of natural resources. So Tunisia has a well-diversified economy, although it remains dominated by only a few large sectors. The economy depends heavily on mineral exports, especially petroleum and phosphates, and the growing manufacturing sector that has received much investment in the last few years is getting important as well. But we cannot forget, of course, the agricultural products that also make a big part of the country. Also important to know that tourism is also a very significant source of income in the country, which can starting to be even more in the new years. Not forgetting, I think I forgot to mention as well that related to South Africa, this is starting to be also a very important part of income as well, and is starting to growing even more. Back into Tunisia, actually, while foreign debt has been brought under control, the country continues to suffer actually from a regional imbalance between the north region and the south region, being the north one more fertile and more economical developed. Okay, also very important to understand that big part of the production and the economy in Tunisia is actually played in Tunis, so a very central one in terms of the capital. Okay, but trade accounts for some of 1/4 of GDP in Tunisia, and Tunisia relies heavily on its trade with Europe, as we know, with the European Union accounting for the bulk of both exports and imports actually. Related also with historical reasons, as we know, France is the most important trading partner in the country, followed by Italy, Germany, and China. And Tunisia often shows an annual trade deficit, actually. In the late 19th, actually, the country signed an agreement with the European Union under the framework of the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership Program. That set in the motion of the creation of the free trade area between Tunisia and the European Union. Also important to know related to the manufacturing sector as well. The Tunisian manufacturing has become much more diversified with new investments in the production and export of mechanical and electromechanical equipment, petroleum products, and chemicals. The textile sector also remains disproportionately large, actually. However, and more than 1/3 of all manufacturing operations are located in Tunis alone, as I mentioned before. On the other hand, investment codes introduced in the 80s have already attracted strong foreign investment, which has enhanced technological transformation, modernization service, and others, which is quite interesting to see as well how the country will develop in these new years and adapt to the new and recent necessities of the markets as well. Speaking a little bit more about Morocco, and as it's true for other African countries, especially the ones that we mentioned here, the Moroccan economy also remains heavily dependent on the export of raw materials. Also, of the growing importance to the economy are modern sectors, particularly tourism, as well as in Tunisia, as I said, and telecommunications. Although together the modern proportions accounts for more than 2/3 of GDP, even though it employs only about 1/3 of the country's workforce. Okay, so actually, since the 80s, the Moroccan government has undertaken a vigorous program of privatization and economic reform encouraged by major international lenders such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Measures have including selling state-owned enterprises, devaluing the currency, and changing pricing policies to encourage local production. This has led actually to a lot of investments in the country. We can see it as well with the free zones that they have developed, such as in Tanger. Actually, measures have included a lot of new free tax zones in the country, We mentioned, of course, Tanger, but there's also Kenitra and also news in Casablanca as well. So it's really starting to work. The country is really working on getting the investment and new production sites from other countries. Of course, tourism is also important in the country. Morocco, sandy beach and sunshine, as well for Tunisia, makes it a great place to develop the tourism as well. But also important to know that attempts to increase exports and control imports have done some success, and the chronic annual trade deficit has begun to narrow. So by the 90s, Morocco had also significantly lowered its foreign debt. The three leading exports are agriculture, okay, very related to citrus fruits and also vegetables, semi-processed goods and consumer goods like textiles. Of course, phosphates and phosphate products are also very important, and major imports are especially on semi-manufacturers and industrial equipment, crude oil and food commodities. Morocco's largest trading partner is the European Union, and that also can nowadays be increasing even more than the last few years due to the agreements that have been developed between the European Union and Morocco free trade zone. So I think it's quite important that we analyze actually these three countries. As we mentioned in the beginning, these three countries are reuniting, of course, that we are talking about Morocco and Tunisia, and we can address this as also the North Africa countries that represent really a big amount of the economy in Africa, but also South Africa. And it's important to see that we might, even if they are very different in terms of culture, very different in terms of size, population, very distant from each other actually as well, with different really cultural behaviors as well. We can understand that some aspects of the economy still remain very similar. The fact that they also, the three of them, rely a lot on natural resources that they export. The fact as well that we discuss in these three countries that, for instance, the manufacturing sector related to textile and even food processing is still quite important as well. And as well the tourism that is starting to become each time an even more important subject. I think it will be important, of course, for all of us, sorry for this, to discuss all of this with our speakers that will give us some important insights on the markets, but also to try to think a little bit on how these countries, despite all the difference, can also have some interest sites either for investment from European countries, but also for exports. So this will definitely be interesting to speak. Well, I thank you once again for listening to me. We will speak in a moment with our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana. We will now discuss the main opportunities and trends in Africa. Ana Pinto will moderate the roundtable that will have the participation of relevant speakers from South Africa, Morocco, and Tunisia. Richard Zurba has over 23 years of experience assisting companies into the African market. He lives in South Africa and he is the director of Zurcom International, a trade facilitation and trade investment advisory services company specializing in Africa and the Caribbean Basin region. Maïssa Emravet is Partnership and Business Development Director at Njano. With proven digital expertise and background, she has worked as a consultant in digital transformation and e-commerce for large offshore companies for more than 10 years. Maïssa is also Incubator Director at AFCAR Incubator, and she has been helping around 260 early-stage projects and the development of a capacity building program for regional innovation hubs. Sarah Moak is the managing partner of Expandia International and Internationalization Consultants, who provides advice and support to foreign companies wishing to expand successfully their businesses into Morocco and North African markets. Don't forget, you are welcome to share your questions and thoughts through the chat.
So hi once again, and thank you, Richard, Maisa, and Sarah for being here. It's a pleasure to be a part of such a wonderful group and quite interesting. So thank you once again for being here. So I would like, firstly, if it's possible, to ask each one of you if you could speak a little bit about your experience on the market as professionally, but also a little bit beyond that, of course. So maybe I would start, since we started before with South Africa. Maybe I will start with Richard.
Okay, well, thank you, Anna. And we are excited about talking to our Portuguese friends today. And so welcome to our Africa discussion. My company has been in operation now for 23 years, since January 1999. And we presently have staff in 16 countries of Africa and 8 in the Caribbean. So we're very experienced. We presently represent 9 American states for trade and all 50 American state departments of commerce for agriculture sales. So we have a very strong emphasis on selling into the African market, agricultural produce, food ingredients, beverages. We have a lot of good people working on that side as well. So although I'm sitting here in Durban, South Africa, we're very active right across the entire continent. And I'm excited about looking forward to that. I'm originally from Canada. And one interesting thing about South Africa is that there's more than 250,000 people who live in South Africa who are descendants of people from Madeira, the island of flowers. So thank you.
Very interesting, Richard. Didn't know about that. So good to hear that. I normally I say that Portuguese people are all over the place. So
they are.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Richard. Maybe we can continue with Maisa from Tunisia.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be among you today. From my part of view, I'm going to talk about the Tunisian market to our beneficiaries' point of view. I mean, we support young change makers and startups to build and structure their projects. I don't want to give like the overview directly, but let's say Tunisian markets, it's a small and difficult market to explore for a lot of startups, but for a lot of them also it's a very interesting testing market to start with.
Thank you so much, Maisa. I imagine, of course, that knowing that it's a smaller country, it can also have its benefits as well. So definitely we will discuss this a little bit further. Thank you so much. Sarah, welcome as well. Could you speak to us a little bit about Morocco? Sarah, I think we are not hearing you.
Of course. Good day, everybody. First of all, thank you for the... Okay. So good day, everybody. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be part of the Business Across Borders Summit, Africa. Well, to tell you more about my experience in the Moroccan market, as a part of a team of international consultants, we support foreign companies to expand their business in Morocco. And we contribute to their growth in a market which is considered as a gateway to the African continent. So my main mission at Expandia International is to support foreign companies of all sizes and industries by offering internationalization services and such as market research, sales representation, organization of business missions, and etc. And well, as a Moroccan, if I had to tell you more about my country in a few words, well, everybody knows that Morocco is a country with wonderful landscapes, rich culture, great weather, and generous people. But if I had to talk about my experience or my business experience in Morocco, I would describe it as a very open market to foreign trade, full of promise and opportunities to foreign companies wishing to export or even to invest in the market. So I think that in Morocco there are many development possibilities, and I consider that international companies should take advantage of it. The country, as you said in the presentation, has modernized many traditional sectors and has developed innovative sectors such as automotive and aerospace. So from my experience, all these sectors undergo strong development today and create several business opportunities in the market. So maybe I will tell you more about it during our roundtable. To that end, today I'm glad to be with all of you here in order to share more about my experience and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you all. Well, now that we have started a little bit with Sarah talking a little bit about the transformation of the Moroccan country, I think we can do also the comparison with Tunisia as well. So more related to North Africa, I think we believe we can say that we are experiencing a swift transformation and significantly a growth in new industrial sectors. So maybe, Sarah, you could speak a little bit with us about that transformation, especially, as you said, automotive sector, the textile at domestic level, and also probably Maisa could tell us a little bit more about the transformation on the technological sector as well that I think we are facing.
Perfect. Well, I think that the growth of new industrial sectors in Morocco, as I said, like automotive industry, aerospace, agro-industry, textile, has been very significant in recent years. So this transformation has been driven by several factors like government policies by making important public investments, but also by attracting foreign investments. I think also that there is other factors of this transformation, which are the strategic location of Morocco that has also contributed so much to this transformation. And in Morocco, we have many skilled workers, which represent also a very important factor. So I think that the growth of these sectors has a positive impact on the Moroccan economy, as they generate job opportunities, increase exports, and contribute to economic diversification. For example, the automotive sector is today the first industrial exporter sector in Morocco, and also an important job creator in the market. I think that almost 30% of industrial jobs are created by automotive companies, such as Renault Group or Stellantis and many others. But I think that we should not forget that also this growth contributes so much, in my point of view, and as a market consultant in Morocco, in offering many business opportunities to foreign companies that would like, for example, to offer their products, services, or experiences, and also know-how to all of these industries that most of them, they have many needs and many requirements.
For sure. I think it could be true to say that all those investments that Morocco has received, as you said, by those foreign companies as well, will also create new demands for potential exporters as well. So I think definitely this can be a very interesting market. Just a small question. Do you believe that is actually we are facing more investments actually now with the free trade zones in Morocco than actually on, let's say, the inside of the country?
Yeah, normally, for example, also with the global situation, what we are living with crisis, etc. Many companies are now today trying to come to Morocco and to invest in these zones, especially where they have a lot of advantages. And Morocco, and especially the Moroccan government, is lately trying to do many initiatives in terms to attract more foreign investment and to generate more opportunities in the market.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. Mais, related to the technology sector, IT, it's not usually what we think about in the first place when we think about Tunisia. Either their perfect, wonderful weather and beaches, but I think this is starting to be an important matter as well for the country as well. Could you speak with us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would say we have all what Sarah said as well for our country. We share a lot of common growth industrial sectors. For years we were relying a lot on textile, but the last few years we saw automotive, aeronautic, also agriculture and electronic manufacturing, like expanding in the country. There's also no focus on renewable energy and environmental technologies growing up in the country, which could lead like to a strategic development plan for all the countries as well, and an entrance for a lot of industries. We saw in the last few years also a lot of focus on developing innovation hubs to support and nurture robotics, telecommunication, and artificial intelligence innovations. Yes, and biotechnology as well. Yes, these are like also bringing new dynamic to the country and also to foreign investment, foreign startups and industry also invested in the country.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting for Tunisia as well, that actually we can see it probably in terms of investment or opportunities for startups or IT companies, that of course it's a country that is receiving a lot of investment from external companies. So from that side, it can also be interesting, but also on the side that is a country that is still developing on those sides. So probably a lot of opportunities, and I think probably have the similarities with Morocco on that as well. So yeah, I think definitely this can be two major countries to speak about it. Speaking a little bit more with Richard, South Africa is considered to be the most industrialized country in Africa, technology, advanced and diverse economy. How can international companies benefit from that, actually, with that position in South Africa? And what would you believe to be the main business needs to integrate the country?
Well, as South Africa has such a diversified economy, that means that there's a lot of opportunities for exporters to come into the region here. South Africa, Southern Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa all together. There's a lot going on. Now, keep in mind, as a Portuguese or European exporter, you can get duty-free access to almost everything that you're trying to sell into all of Africa, and that the European Union is presently negotiating with the African Union through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for a complete and comprehensive trade bloc agreement where there hopefully will be free trade amongst the two big blocs. But for now, if you're selling as a Portuguese exporter into South Africa, almost everything that is sold is duty-free or at a very, very low competitive tariff. So you have that benefit. And I would also say that there are a lot of different sectors that match Portugal's strengths. So if we look at agri-tech, South Africa's needing that for expansion. Keep in mind that a lot of companies here do not work only in South Africa. They're situated across the whole region. So if you find a distributor here in South Africa, you're likely going to find somebody that will distribute into countries like Zambia, even into Mozambique and possibly further north into the Congo. But that is the region where South Africa has a very strong regional hold. If you go to the East African community, it might be Kenya. If you go to West Africa, it might be Ghana, or Cote d'Ivoire if you're English or French. But South Africa for Southern Africa is really the key country for distribution. And we've had a lot of success with digital requirements, including consulting. There's a real capacity issue with that in South Africa. And so coming in with digital solutions is an opportunity area. Healthcare and devices particularly is another big area of opportunity for companies from Portugal. And food and beverage also. If you look at opportunities in the commercial food areas where we have already some good Portuguese representation, there is opportunities for Portuguese food companies. So there is a big gap as well in a lot of different areas where South Africa is not necessarily strong, but that does not mean that there is no opportunity. And that's another thing to look at. Focus where you find good companies, not looking at the national statistics. So another thing is making sure that when you come to Africa, when you're looking for a good partner, make sure that you've double checked on everything. And even in my own company, we have legal people who will help with background checks, for example. And through the many years of working with African companies, we have not had one instance of working where that has resulted in a problem of corruption with any of our foreign companies that we've introduced. That's with 4,500 projects. So really, really, really check on the character of your company, check into the history of the counterpart company. That's the one thing. But for South Africa, it's a very diversified economy. We need almost everything. People are very friendly to Portugal. And so I wouldn't hesitate to want to discuss through market access any opportunities that you might be reviewing right now for South Africa or other parts of the region.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Richard. I think you addressed two questions here that I think are actually very, very important. One, and actually for the three countries, one, of course, that is dealing with a lot of European companies. I think they have this fear when coming to African countries in terms of stability of the markets or not, reliability on the partners that they can find. I think that this, of course, is really related a lot with the stability of the markets. But as you said, since we can take all the precautions, of course, as well, before starting the business, I think that's the most important. Don't know if Sarah and Maïs agree on that as well, especially when we are talking about investments, but not only, even with exports, I think this can be important. But one other question that I think I will expand as well to Sarah and Maïsa is the fact that you said, and I think it's very true, the fact that one country can be a showcase to other countries in Africa as well. So you said that South Africa can, be the first door to enter to other markets. I believe this can also be the case with Morocco and Tunisia. I don't know, Richard, if you want to speak a little bit more about that before passing the word to Sarah and Maïsa.
Sure. Realistically, South Africa is a hub for the Southern Africa Development Community, which in fact, if you look at the total reach of South Africa, you probably have a population of 300 million rather than just 60 million inside the borders of South Africa. So looking at Johannesburg as an important air, rail, and road hub, it's very important to see why there's so many distribution centers there. It's a very important location for redistribution throughout the rest of the region. And through that, you have access to some of the fastest growing countries. South Africa itself is not growing very quickly, but there's other countries in the region that are growing very fast. And so you want to make sure that you're able to reach other markets. And I would also like to say that don't neglect looking at smaller markets as well, because you might find very good clients in a country like Botswana or Portugal, Portuguese exports going into Namibia, for example, maybe Zambia. These countries are growing very quickly. There's
Less
a lot of
competitive
opportunity.
maybe as well, or where we can find new opportunities. Sure.
Absolutely, because South Africa is not the only market, but these are markets that are tied in there. But the end buyers, if you're a food seller, for example, you might want to look at independent buyers in some of these other countries, because, and I'll tell you, one interesting fact is that these countries are often ignored. If you go in there and you visit and you start developing a relationship, that's going to be a key thing. The good thing about Portuguese people is that you haven't lost touch with building relationships in business. It's absolutely crucial in Africa to do that, to build a friendship as you're building a business together with your counterpart. And that is something that we share together. Unlike the Germans or the British, the Portuguese people are much better at that relationship side of things. And so as you come into a lot of different places and understanding them, know that the first few minutes of every meeting is for coffee, not for hard pitch selling.
We definitely know how to do that for sure. Exactly. That's for sure. Perfect. Thank you so much, Richard. Maybe Sarah and Maisa would like to add a few words on this.
I guess like both countries, for Sarah and I, like we represent an attractive gateway due to our proximity to Europe. So our countries could be an interesting spot to implement industries, different industries in our country, but also not only Europe, because we're part of Africa as well, and we have this proximity, which makes it like very strategic to implement a project there. In Tunisia, also there's of course a well-developed transport infrastructures. We have international airports, modern seaports, but also like extensive roads,
a good network of
extensive, yes, of roads. And also you spoke earlier about like free trade agreements, but not only with the
European
Europe,
Union, but also
yes,
in Africa, for
United,
sure, and other Arabic
yes,
countries.
And United States as well.
For sure, exactly. No, that definitely can also be a door, even for other countries, not only in Africa. No, that definitely. No, I think it's quite important, and as you said, also the proximity that here we have with North Africa, that is not quite the same for South Africa, of course, but this can definitely be a good opportunity. And even with ports here, it's the same, I think, with Morocco. You have a very good resource in terms of infrastructures for that, and definitely it helps business. So Sarah, could you do you have a few words, even if Maïs already told a little bit as well?
Yeah, I confirm what Maïsa said, that Morocco and Tunisia and all North Africa is a great entry door for to many interesting markets, because we have a very strategic location between Europe, Africa, and even Middle East. So this makes these markets a potential gateway to all of these markets that we have mentioned. For example, in Morocco, talking about Morocco, we have been also working to make stronger the economic ties and alliances that we have, for example, with many countries. And they did the creation of a very large network of trade agreements. I think we are one of the countries in Africa with more trade agreements. We have signed like 60 or 62 trade agreements with different countries and regions. For example, with USA, with the European Union, with Turkey, many African countries, and Arab countries like the GCC countries as well. So I think all these aspects, all these assets are can be beneficial for companies or international companies that are wishing to enter to Africa. And also, I can say maybe for Tunisia as well, Morocco and Tunisia are like a great test market, because you are like it's the first step that companies could the best first step that companies could take, because it allows you to test the flexibility, the openness, and the capacity of your company if you are ready to sell in this market. And also it gives you the opportunity to understand a new business culture, which is totally different from the European and Western culture.
Definitely, and also at relatively small cost as well. So it's quite important for that, definitely. Okay, I actually have a question from the audience. So from Mrs. Daniela Rodriguez, she is asking, good morning. I would like to understand if exporting customs furniture is an opportunity for these markets. I represent a kitchen furniture company and we are a Portuguese company. How do we find companies that want to work with custom kitchen furniture company? Can we give some advice? Can you give some advice, please? I don't know if you have any insights on this, if furniture is something that is quite demanding on your markets or not, and especially here in terms of kitchen devices.
You can let me go first. I think South Africa does have a well-developed kitchen furniture and cabinet making market. So this is going to be one that is very difficult to compete against as well, because there's a lot of high quality cabinet making done in South Africa, and it's a market that I wouldn't call it oversaturated, but it's something that you would be competing very hard against. What I would say is that look at West Africa, some of the better countries, because they don't have the quality of local manufacturing in the economies there. And if you're coming in at a very nice high-end quality manufacturing base, and people are there is a nice top end of the market there that likely would only be satisfied with imported product, and particularly not inexpensive Chinese things. You know, we want good workmanship, and so this is something that I would recommend. Don't look to South Africa, look to maybe West Africa, which is a little closer. And obviously you still have the benefit of entering duty-free into those countries most of the time.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. I don't know if Maïs and Sarah would like to add.
Would be the same for us too. But I mean, if you do some competitive analysis, and you can eventually decrease the prices, like offer better prices on the market, because it's one of the goods that costs a lot in the country. Yeah, maybe you could have some access to market opportunities.
Okay, Sarah?
Well, I think that we are similar to Tunisia as well. It's a very competitive market here in Morocco, but products or Portuguese products are very well appreciated by Moroccans. So maybe there is an opportunity that we could analyze together. But also it's important to say, I think the one of the key success tips, you know, in Morocco is to find the right partner, either a distributor or someone with whom you could cooperate. I think it's one of the key things that this company should focus on it.
Okay, thank you, Sarah and Mais as well. I would add that probably Morocco and Tunisian are more related to more traditional furniture in general terms. No, more to Morocco probably, not for for Tunisia. It's starting to grow.
Yes, it's a lot of custom kitchen, and we have a lot of imports as well of foreign
furniture.
Yes, brands.
Okay, so that's great. So probably to Daniela saying that here Tunisia can be a good market to start, and probably Morocco can be seen as a more important market, but more on a good partnership with someone. So continue here with our roundtable. We know that also several countries worldwide are facing or expecting economic recessions. How do you see this impact actually on your economy? So in South Africa, in this case, for Richard?
South Africa has relatively low growth right now. And obviously, when the world went into COVID and then there was the war in the Ukraine, all of these impacts had a big effect across all of Africa, particularly for at the food level and at the fuel price level, noticing that the price of petroleum has dropped very, very low relative to prices. So we're seeing today, we saw that the price of oil has fallen. So it could be that these could be stimulus, but on the other hand, the price of oil is falling because there's an anticipation that world growth will be lower because of some of the problems in the USA that we've seen this last week. So there's I would say generally, Africa is going to continue to grow very strongly over the next year. Even if there is a recession in the rest of the world, it will still be a growth market overall. South Africa will likely be coming in at very low growth, maybe 1 or 2%. The thing with Africa is that we have a very fast growing demographic, and there's a lot of latent local demand that is coming up from the grassroots in Africa because of the population growth. And we saw that Africa presently has 17% of the world's population, but by the end of the century, it may have over 40% of the world's population. And so we're seeing that growth happen. And with that growth in the population, we're also seeing a growth in opportunities. So we're even during COVID, when a lot of countries went below zero and had negative growth and all of that, a lot of the good African economies were resilient and still growing at 2 to 3%. They were regularly growing at 7 to 8%, but they didn't go negative. And now they're back up at 7, 8%. And so we're seeing good results. So it's a mixed story across Africa because it's a lot of different countries, a lot of different regions. But I think overall Africa will continue to do well, even through the if we're seeing a potential recession coming in the world, then Africa can be an alternate market.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you so much, Richard. Good news on that for sure. To know the stability of growing on the markets. I think that's definitely important and probably not the same case for countries in Europe. That's for sure. How about Tunisia, Maïsia? How?
We rely a lot on exports. So as this economic decline, we see also the impact on different industries like automotive, textile. These are like agriculture as well. These industries are really affected by the global economic decline. There's also since COVID, and tourism is affected. This sector is really today in bad shape and in strong need of innovation to develop like a new approach, exactly, new strategy for tourism. But to mitigate a bit all of these, the government has worked a lot on like encouraging foreign investment to come with legal tax incentives, you know.
Yeah. We actually are seeing that it's quite interesting to see, and I was going to leave that to the end, but to see that actually there are very similar things that are really similar here in Portugal, and even with the industries that you are mentioning, such as the textile, that is also very important for us as well, such as the tourism, of course, that for us it's growing a lot right now actually, but this is quite interesting, and also to see not only in the perspective of seeing these markets as an important market to export or to invest, but also markets from where we can learn as well altogether, you know, in terms of, okay, what can we do to grow a little bit more on this kind of industries where we are also competing with each other, that's for sure. Thank you, Maisa. And Sarah, I don't know if you want to add something about Morocco and.
Of course. Well, Morocco depends on the world economy, and this is us exposed to global crises, any crisis. For example, last year we experienced the lack of rain in the country. So the global climate crisis has had a great impact on our economy and our agriculture, which is one of the most strategic sectors in Morocco. But well, this year we are more optimistic after an important rainfall that will save the sector and in this case boost the economy.
And even the other snow a few weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, we had a good year, as we say. And on the other hand, well, our economy also has been affected by the geopolitical tensions, especially with the war against Ukraine, and the high rise, for example, of some prices, especially for some products, which Morocco is a major importer, especially cereals and oil. So this has caused an inflation in the market. But I think that despite all of this, the Moroccan authorities are trying to so hard to maintain a prudent economy by following some economic policies and setting up some actions and reforms with regard to this. So the inflation this year, for example, will decline, and the economic growth also is expected to accelerate this year to 3%. So hopefully things will get better, and I think that well, things are getting also better because we really note this in the market, and we see that there is more dynamism than before, especially last year.
No, that's actually quite interesting what you mentioned, Sarah, and the fact that you mentioned also the impacts of war on the markets. That also is a lot to do with the inflation that a lot of countries are facing right now. But also we had a post and before COVID, right? That we all faced here, and I think this was really. For all the countries. This is also actually one question from the audience, from Mr. Carlos Lima, that is asking, do you see any difference on the market after COVID, any business opportunity that you can identify from that? We know that we have several, situations coming after COVID. Of course, the world didn't stop, but is it true to say that we had in your economies one before and after COVID? Did it bring any changes? I don't know if Maisa, in terms of the part of technological service as well, probably bring a little bit more of enthusiasm to do that and to bring new opportunities.
Yes. I just answered also in the chat, renewable energy, guys. There's a lot the countries promoting this and IT services as well. These are like where the opportunities can be interesting to follow. And with all the IT infrastructure and the investment and the work force, like artificial intelligence, robotics, and biotechnology are definitely sectors where a lot of opportunities can be taken.
Perfect. Thank you, Maïssa. Sarah, is the same on your side on Morocco, or other different opportunities that you might have noticed?
Yeah, well, Morocco has especially took into consideration that we have to invest in the local manufacturing of the country, and also the supply chain. For example, also there are now many sectors that after COVID, they are representing more business opportunities, especially, for example, IT services, as Maïssa said, digitalization, for example, of many services of the public organisms and institutions. Now they are trying to modernize and to digitalize all the processes that they have. Also, education. Some schools are now trying to develop some tools to introduce technology and education. Healthcare also, it's one sector that has been developed during COVID. Many companies, for example, here they have been producing some healthcare devices that in the past they didn't have any knowledge about it, and now some of them, for example, the last few weeks we have been visiting some companies in this sector, and they're even exporting to Europe and Africa after for them the COVID was a real opportunity. So I think there are many sectors and many opportunities that have been created because of COVID. Now COVID in Morocco is something that we forgot about it, but yeah, it's something.
In Portugal as well. In Portugal as well,
yeah.
I think.
But yeah, I think that has created a lot of opportunities as well.
Despite the fact that we don't think about it right now, it still has had some effects, right? And
exactly.
on the countries. No, I completely agree with that. I think it's the same for us. I don't know about Richard, if it's the same, if you felt that in South Africa, or if it was less demanding on that side.
I think that what we've seen is a very fast rebound for tourism and hospitality. That is the largest foreign exchange earner for South Africa. So having people come in from overseas and having their vacations and holidays here. And that has rebounded very quickly. And through that, we've had a lot of disruption in the market. So a lot of some hotel chains and airlines and all of that, they went out of business. New ones have come in, and when new players come in, that provides opportunities for new partners for ancillary support. So all of the different things that go into that are key areas where there's a lot of growth right now in South Africa and Southern Africa. And if we look at even restaurants, so you could look at catering equipment, management systems, food service, there's a lot of opportunities there in the hotel chains, again, IT and digital management, so that everything can move smoothly. So we've had a rebound in that market, and that is a very key one. But I'd also say that agriculture has gone off like crazy across Africa because of, we mentioned the high prices from the price shocks around the world. But the demand for agricultural equipment has been the highest it's ever been in South Africa in recent months, and because we're looking for localization of food sources and creating opportunities here, and the farmers are recognizing that, and so that's very important. So we're seeing that through the figures of the highest demand for new tractors and crop equipment, and so that is right across the whole board. And we're looking at a diversification to more higher margin crops, which means that Portuguese companies that are coming in and supporting in those sectors can come in with specialty equipment that they're used to and selling to Europe, maybe looking at Southern Africa now. So those two things, I'd say agriculture, tourism, very big and very fast growth right now in the region.
Definitely very interesting, Richard. It's something that we are facing here, more like related on the lack of materials, for instance, but more on raw materials actually for the development of new tools. But I think that it's important for us also to see that this also created an opportunity on new markets in terms of delivering the tools, and that's definitely important to address, and very interesting to see the different dynamics that the three countries have faced after this. It's once again, I think, material to read and to understand how we can grow as well from those experiences as a country and as an entrepreneur, I think. I have here just one last question as well. That's, as Africa is a diverse continent offering human and natural resources that have the potential to yield inclusive growth and eradicate poverty in the region as well. Is there a long way? We know it, but do you believe that a continental alliance could contribute to that? You know, in terms of all together, let's find a solution, and as well as how could the companies also benefit from that as well, even in the national side, you know, in your countries. Sarah?
Well, inshallah, as we say here.
Inshallah.
Yeah. Well, we always say unity is power. So I think the success of any continental alliance will depend on the willingness of African nations to work together towards common goals. But I think that this alliance will also depend on the real support of especially the international community. But I don't know, from a personal point of view, I see it difficult because each African country has its own strategies, its own challenges, interests and allies as well. So I don't know, speaking about my region, which is North Africa, including, we hope to see that one day that the countries of this region, especially talking about Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, united and all focused on facing the real challenges together. But I think, well, with all the situation that we have today, there is still a long way to do. But in Africa, in Africa,
yes, I think, as you said, the fact that also we have different stages of development of the countries, different stabilities of the countries in terms of governmental issues as well, and then the economic goals that come after us are also different. So I think the goal is there, of course, as an objective, and there's something that can work, but probably the difficulties to go and to achieve that can be hard. Do you have the same feeling, Richard, from the South Africa point of view, comparing here to the North region?
Yeah, the big change here is the change in the culture. The young people here are not like their grandparents' generation at all. The young people across sub-Saharan Africa are very focused. They're still very tied to their traditional family values, to their faith communities, but they're very entrepreneurial. They believe in education. They are very good at things like timekeeping. They're very focused on the work elements, highly globalized. Most of them speak English. So they're very tied into a quick opportunity, ability to recognize opportunities internationally. This is really key, but they're not like the youth in Europe or my home country, Canada, or the United States. They're very traditional. They would be considered very conservative by the views of many Europeans, but they're going to take over the world. And I will tell you why. Because there's 300 million young African people who are in the middle class, and they fit that description. There isn't another big growth area in the world that has that is that size, that is of that age, that is of that creativity, and they're going to learn. They've come from nowhere, and they're going to work very hard to become middle class and upper class. And this is what we're seeing. We're actually seeing this year by year in the growth statistics, in the digital economy, in venture capital startups, in a lot of different areas where entrepreneurial thought with very few capital inputs is required. So watch the sub-Saharan Africa space. It's moving already. It's been moving for the last 15, 20 years, but now the exponential curve is moving upward very fast. And the last comment I would say is that remember, when you come to Africa, working with older people who are 60 years old and working with people who are 30 years old, it's like working with two different countries because the cultures are so different. Understand that the young people in Nigeria nearly tried to overthrow through the ballot box the old president. They formed a political party, they created something, and they got a big proportion of the population that was youth driven, and that was just very recent. This is something that is happening across Africa. They hate corruption. That's another thing. Young people across Africa generally have a loathing for corruption. They want to see merit in what they create, and they want to be able to sell in a fair market. They're tired of the establishment. They're tired of the elite controlling things through corruption. They want to change. And so we're actually seeing this at the ballot boxes. And if you look at the demographics, people who are 18 to 32 years old form the majority of most of the voting blocks in African countries.
That's super interesting, Richard. And I think, well, as we can see here, even on this panel, as we are having two young women from Africa, you know, speaking here on this panel and about the economy of the countries, their countries. This says a lot, I think, from the changes on the dynamics of the countries, and I think that's quite important, but also quite important for the companies that are thinking of going to Africa and export to the country, to understand the difference that they might face in the next few years, even in terms of consumption, because when we change, of course, we are in a global world now with the internet helping us with that, but people still have their traditions, but evolving it also can change the way that we consume things, and I think definitely when someone wants to export for these countries, they need to be aware of that and the cultural changes. So I'll pass the word to Sarah, maybe to speak also a little bit about this.
To Maisa?
Oh, Maisa, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say very quickly, I think it's not the lack of like continental free trade initiatives now that are operating in Africa, but more of, I think, the resources young people, young change makers could be facing to go and explore other countries. Like for us instead, we are working on a new program to help startups and projects scale in the continent or on other countries, and going like, you know, by simply providing these entrepreneurs, like, you know, the capital to go and explore other markets, to understand, you know, if there's a real market opportunities in these countries. Because yes, internet is here, we are on a global world and information is accessible, but sometimes, like, you know, between what you read on internet and what's on the ground, it's completely different. So I guess, yes, like collaboration, definitely yes. Being open to other markets and other cultures, definitely yes. I think there's a will with the new generation, like Richard said. But hopefully, like we could see some opportunities, real opportunities in the future within African continent. Yes.
That's great, actually, the fact that we are changing a little bit, and that's actually a little bit different than what we are facing here in Portugal. We are facing the era where, for instance, the youth and the entrepreneurial youth is more thinking, okay, how can we grow away and not really in Portugal, let's say. And I think probably in Africa, as you were mentioning, we are facing the other way around. So thinking, how can I invest in my own country and developing my own country? And if it's not on my own country, how can I be around this area to develop it? So I think this is great, and definitely when youth it's in investing in its own future and the future of its country, it can create bigger opportunities for all of us. So I think that's great. Thank you all. I think we have done the round of our questions. It was amazing. I think we could stay here and speak a little bit more for a couple of hours, but we have a schedule to respect. I think we have respected it. So thank you all. It was really a pleasure to speak with you. And I would like also, of course, to thank our audience for being here. And well, I wish you wonderful business and wonderful opportunities for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
See you. Thank you, everybody.
To meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you all for assisting and actively participating at Business Across Borders Summit. Before we formally end the program, we want to highlight that you can now communicate through the chats and schedule B2B meetings with the Portuguese SMS, sponsors, speakers, and other international attendees through the platform. AEP, the main promoter of project PME Connect 2, will now close the summit.
Thank you all for this fantastic session. I'd like to make a special thank to MarketAx for the organization of this very rich and I believe it's very profitable for our company's conference and summit. Also thanks to Ana Pinto, João Sardo and Pedro Vieira for the leadership of each roundtable and to all the speakers. I believe that we have stressed all together a lot of fundamental aspects to do business in these more than nine markets that were covered, crossing almost all the world, not the Americas, but almost Africa, Asia, and also Europe, the traditional European countries of Europe and our business partners commonly. But one thing that is really interesting is that notwithstanding all the wars, all the instability, the economic turmoil that we face, we have seen that based on culture, based on demographic changes, based on economic and society changes, we paved the way to opportunities. And our companies, Portuguese companies, and given the openness of our traditionally of the openness of our mindset, the open mind of our entrepreneurs, I believe that we have a lot of opportunities to explore. This session will be widespread on the not only on our databases that covers more than 100,000 companies, but all the partners of these projects will widespread also on the social media, because it was really a very interesting and a very rich session. And I hope that with your contribution, our companies can do a more sustainable business. Thank you so much once again for all the speakers, and we'll be in touch for sure, covering all the pathway, the success over these markets. Thank you again in the name of AIP. Thank you so much.